Okay. Hey, welcome to the Homelessness Funding Finance and Grant Administrator Orientation. I'm going to get started because I would like to do some introductions. It's always good for us to hear who is here with us, and I think for you all to hear who's here. So we'll go ahead. Russell, do you want to click to that next slide? I also will say, if anybody is feeling comfortable sharing their video, it is a lot easier talking to actual faces than black screens. So if you feel comfortable, no pressure, but we would love to see your faces. This is a new and different and challenging time to do trainings like this. And so we'd love to see you if you're willing. I'll go ahead and start and we'll introduce staff. Another caveat I usually mention is that these trainings are always a little bit challenging because we have folks that are participating that have been doing this for a very long time, and we have folks that are new to this. And so bear with us as we try to balance all of that. And so anyway, with that, I'll go ahead and start. I'm Tricia Davis. I'm the program manager of the Homelessness Programs Office in the Department of Workforce Services, Housing and Community Development Division. And we'll go ahead and let staff introduce themselves. Jen.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Domenici. I am a program specialist in the Homelessness Programs Office under Tricia.
Hello everyone, my name is Lainey Myers. I am an HPO program specialist as well, working mainly with the Balance of State Continuum of Care, along with Jennifer Domenici.
I'm Russell Goodman. I work in the Homeless Programs Office, mainly with Salt Lake County COC and Washington County LHCC.
Sarah.
My computer is unbelievably slow sometimes. Maybe it's just my clicking ability. My name is Sarah Moore, and I am a program specialist in the Homelessness Programs Office working for Tricia.
I'm Joseph Jensen. I'm part of the HMIS team here in the Homelessness Programs Office.
I'm Lynn Sharp. I'm also part of the HMIS team in the Homelessness Programs Office.
Hi, I'm Michelle Walton. I'm also part of the HMIS team, and I do most of the reporting for these contracts, so you'll be hearing from me a lot.
Hello, I'm Zach Guthrie. I'm the newest UHIMIS program specialist, but I work with Lynn and Michelle and Joseph on the HIMIS team.
Perfect. And Devin Shipp is not on this call with us, but he's on the HMIS team, and he's in our Workforce Research and Development Division of the Department of Workforce Services. So helps a lot with data and data requests as we get those. Also helps coordinate the homelessness data dashboard. And Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie Carty. I'm the DWS Financial Manager over all of HCD funding, including the homelessness. And Nicole is my staff. Nicole?
Oh, we can't hear you. I think I see you're talking. Nope. Maybe technical difficulties?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I'm Nicole Hahn, and I'm the fiscal grant manager over dealing with homelessness for DWS.
All right. So that is us, and you'll be hearing from most of us today. I just want to say it's really great to see your faces, those of you that are sharing. Patrice just went off, but she was up in space, so that was fun. Anyway, thanks. It's really a lot more fun to talk to faces. Okay, next slide, Russell. Okay. We like to just give a quick and dirty overview of what the Department of Workforce Services is. We have 9 different divisions within the Department of Workforce Services. For those of you who don't know, we have a division that's called the Workforce Development Division and the Eligibility Services Division, which are the divisions that work with your families and individuals who need financial assistance, food assistance, for example. We have the Unemployment Division. That's, you know, a very busy division right now, I'm sure, as you all know. And a lot of different divisions. There's Refugee Services Office, the Office of Child Care, Admin Support Division. I won't name them all because I won't remember them all right this second, but there are 9, and we are a division, one of those 9. So within the Department of Workforce Services, our division focuses mainly, well, I guess really 3 main things here that you can see. So community development, our homelessness programs, and then affordable housing. So we have 2 state committees and commissions that, well, not only 2, but the main 2 kind of related to our work are the Commission on Housing Affordability. We'll see if I got that right. And we've got staff that are the state staff for that commission. That commission is chaired by Senator Andrigg. And then the committee that we are the state staff for and help support right now is the State Homeless Coordinating Committee. And that committee is chaired by Lieutenant Governor Cox and has, per statute, some members of that committee. There are 5 mayors on that committee. And those 5 mayors are mayors that have the largest homeless shelters in their cities. So we have the mayor of Ogden, mayor of St. George, South Salt Lake, Midvale, and Salt Lake. And again, that's per state statute. And then the department heads of the major state departments. So Department of Human Services, Department of Health. There's the Utah State Board of Education that is on that committee. I say this because it's the State Homeless Coordinating Committee that really makes the final decisions about all of the funding that we manage. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. They're also the committee that is reviewing performance measures and outcomes for all of you in your contracts. And it's very public information. And so we'll talk a lot about that in a little while as well. If you are interested in hearing those conversations, you can go to the public notice website, which is, somebody help me, publicnotice.utah.gov, I believe, and subscribe to the State Homeless Coordinating Committee because homelessness is a hot topic. So you all with us are under the microscope. So welcome to being under the microscope. So that's our division. We might look at a couple things on the website in a little bit. In housing and community development, I've talked about this, but our homelessness programs office is your statewide support of programs and projects providing services and interventions that focus on
the difference between web solutions and
on providing services and interventions that focus on making episodes of homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. And I do remember that I just forgot something, which is I just dove right in because I got nervous about time last time. That's what just happened. I'm going to back up because we would like to hear who's here with us. So my apologies for jumping the gun. None of my staff were like screaming at me, so that's okay. Thanks, guys. No, just kidding. Okay, I'm just going to go with who I see on my screen. So sometimes it's initials, sometimes it's first name, so bear with me. We have Rian Rod. If you don't mind just saying what your name is and what agency you represent, that would be great. Maybe not. Okay, we'll skip. How about PAAG?
This is Paige, and this is the case managers, Neely, Roxanne, and Lynette.
Awesome, thank you. Amy Fladmo.
Hi there, I'm with the YWCA Utah Women in Jeopardy program.
Great, thank you. Summer.
Hey, Summer's in with me. This is Deja, and I have Warren in the office as well. We're just trying to social distance.
Awesome. I thought you were Summer because you've got your mask on. Okay, fair enough. Curtis Pendleton. Okay, Patrice.
Hi, Patrice Dixon. I'm COO of Social Services with Utah Community Action.
Thank you. It looks like you're in a lovely spot, Patrice.
It'd be nice to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Not anything against your meeting. I just out of the work.
Hey, listen, there will be no offense taken on our part. I just have Debbie, D-E-B-B-I-E. Is that Debbie Mayo? Not sure. Okay. Maybe not. See, I'm gonna keep y'all on your toes. This is part of it. Peggy.
Peggy Green, Iron County Karen Chair, Cedar City, Utah.
Thank you. Karen.
Which one?
Karen McCandless.
Oh, Karen McCandless, Community Action Services and Food Bank in Provo.
All right. Sydney LaCour.
Hi, I'm Sydney LaCour. I'm the Division Director of Youth Homelessness with Volunteers of America.
Awesome. Thank you. Good to see your face.
This is Debbie Mayo. My computer was being stupid.
No worries. Who are you with, Debbie?
New Horizons Crisis Center in Richfield.
Awesome. Janae.
Janae Fratton, I'm the Operations Director with CAPSA up in Logan.
Thank you. Good to see your face. H. Adams.
Hi, this is Haley Adams. I work with Canyon Creek Services in Cedar City. I'm the housing coordinator in the housing division.
Great, thank you. Jana Hoyle. Okay, I'm watching the chat, and I do know that some people don't have mics and things, so if I totally fine. I have another Summer with Lantern House, but we heard from you guys. Loanne Lee.
Loanne says she doesn't have a mic or camera, but can you
Okay, thank you. There it is, see. All right, thanks for having me back. Kathy Havens.
Hello, I'm Kathy Havens, and I'm with the Housing Authority of the County of Salt Lake in the accounting department.
Great, thanks, Kathy. Andy Beatles.
I am Andy Beatles with the Weber Housing Authority.
Thank you. Caitlin Sorensen.
Hi, I'm Kate Sorensen. I'm with Canyon Creek Services in Cedar City.
Great, thank you. Angela Chapman.
Angela doesn't have her mic, but she's for Street Clinic. She's our Chief Financial Officer.
Okay. Hi, thanks, Stacy. Stacy, you might as well keep going.
Stacy Stevens with 4th Street Clinic.
Hello. Did I already say Julie Sloan? I'm going to try to keep track in my head.
Hi, Julie Sloan with Uinta Basin Association of Governments in Roosevelt.
Great. Shannon?
Hi, I'm Shannon Daly, Financial Services Manager with Provo City Housing and Utah Regional Housing, our nonprofit.
Great, thank you. Rebecca Gibbons?
Hi, I'm with Wasatch Behavioral Health in Provo, and I do accounting.
Thank you. The names are moving around on my screen, so I'm going to do my best here. Did we get Jenna Seeley?
Hi, this is Jenna Seeley. I'm the accounting manager with Utah Community Action.
All right, thank you. Lisa Schumacher, did I say that right?
You did say it right. I'm Lisa Schumacher. I'm with Wasatch Behavioral Health, and I am the grants coordinator. Hi, Rebecca. Haven't seen you in forever.
Thank you. How about Bailey White?
Hi, Bailey White with the Road Home. I'm the Director of Grants Management.
Thank you. Oh, the names just shifted again. Pam Liston?
Yep, Pam Liston from Provo Housing Authority and Utah Regional Housing. I'm the Special Projects Coordinator.
Great, thank you. I have Justa Russell, which I know is not Goodman. Is it OPAT?
Yep, Russell Opatz with Housing Connect, Resident Services Director.
Great, thank you. Kelly Landers.
Hi, this is Kelly. I work with First Step House. I'm an accountant here in Salt Lake City.
Thank you. Krista.
Hey, it's Kristen Floyd, Executive Director with Safe Harbor. Hi, Trish.
Hi. Why can't I see your face? Let's see, Sierra Perry.
I'm Sarah Perry from Canyon Creek Services in Cedar City, and I'm the case manager.
Thank you. Liz Owens.
Hi, I'm Liz Owens. I'm with YWCA Utah.
Thanks. I know Travis, you don't have a mic. Hi, Travis. Amber Thurkill.
Amber Thurkill with Open Doors. I also have Misty Tucker here as well.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Sahil.
Hey, this is Sahil Oberoi with Utah Community Action. I'm Director of Housing. Trisha, I would not want to be anywhere else but here with you right now.
Oh, you're so nice, Sahil.
I look forward to these meetings. I've been just, you know, I put a circle on it this morning. It's just out of excitement.
Perfect. We will not disappoint. Marcy Leak.
Yes.
Hi, can you just introduce yourself and the agency you're with?
Hi, yes. My name is Marcy Leak. I work at 4th Street Clinic, and I'm their mobile clinic program manager.
Great, thank you. Josh. Just a Josh, not sure which one.
I think that's Josh from Food and Care. I don't think his computer had a mic on it.
Okay. Oh, no worries. He just
So
put
he's
it in the
listening
chat.
in.
Yeah, great. Is that Brent?
It is.
Hi.
Sorry, we were on the other link. The only link we received was.
Oh.
I was told it was the same link for either meeting. So.
Oh shoot. Sorry about that.
There's been about 7 of us sitting over in the other one.
Sorry about
Wondering
that.
if there was another meeting going on without us. So.
Sorry about that. And you're with Food and Care. Okay, let's see. Who are we missing? The names have been moving around on me, so if I didn't get you, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Monty, I don't think we got you.
Yeah, my name is Monty Mehmet. I work for Wasatch Behavioral Health. I'm the manager of their homeless program.
Great, thank you. Couple of reasons we do this, so that we can hear who's, we can just kind of connect with who's here, and you can also get a better understanding about who is funded throughout the state. I think that's a really great opportunity. And I want to throw this out there for anybody I missed, because the names have been moving around on me, and so I've been trying to pay attention. Becky, I don't think we got you.
Hello,
Hi.
Becky from the Housing Authority.
Good to see your face.
Thank you. Good to see yours.
Krista.
Hey, Krista Nimchek with Housing Connect.
Good to see you too.
Lucas Martin says he's on with the River Association of Governments.
Okay, perfect. Rian Rod, anybody else we missed?
Curtis Pendleton, Center for Women and Children in Crisis.
Great, hi Curtis.
Hi, Tricia.
Okay. Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. Well, it's good to see faces. It's really refreshing actually to see faces. I don't know about you all, but I'm pretty burned out on this online thing. So appreciate those of you who are willing to do that with us. Also appreciate you if you're not. I get it. Like bad hair days, all the things. Pajamas, totally fine, get it. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Russell. There we go. All right, so diving back in, thanks for entertaining us with that. The Homelessness Programs Office manages many different funding sources. The majority of them we did combine into the one application, the RFP, the request for proposal that was conducted in the spring and that was awarded to you all that are on this call. So we've got our Homelessness Solutions Grant, which is a combination of federal funding, the Emergency Solutions Grant, and state funding to meet the match requirement for that federal funding source. We do it that way so that we don't make you have to meet that match requirement. And so that's a combination of funding. We have the state homelessness funding, which is from the Homeless to Housing account and the Pamela Atkinson Homeless Trust Fund. So if y'all donated to that fund on your taxes, you will know that your donation is going to good places. Everything that is donated during tax season to the Pamela Atkinson Homeless Trust Fund is put back out to service providers throughout the state. So that's a really exciting thing and fun thing for us to get to work with. We have the state homelessness funding for shelter operations, and that is a funding, again, says it in the name, it's specifically for shelter operations. We do have some temporary assistance for needy families, also referred to as TANF, that is federal funding and has really specific requirements for determining eligibility, for example, for families that you serve if you receive that funding source. We also this year added in our allocation for HOPWA, which is Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS. And that is a federal funding source, which also has very specific requirements and uses. Another fund that our team manages is the Homeless Cities Mitigation Fund. I missed something in that title, I'm pretty sure. Homeless Cities Mitigation Fund. Anyway, it's a state sales tax, and it is in statute, the cities that are eligible for that funding source. It's not included in this RFP process that you all went through with us, but just wanted to mention it as another funding source that we manage. Next, all right. I am sure that many of you know this, but just in case there are folks that aren't aware with how our state is set up for homeless services, we have 3 continuum of care in our state. And that is a title that's used by Housing and Urban Development for federal funding and for federal coordination. We have Salt Lake, COC, Mountain Land, COC, and the Balance of State, COC. You'll notice by the map that Mountain Land is 3 counties, Summit, Utah, and Wasatch. Salt Lake is 1 county. And because the Balance of State is so large and really every other county, the state decided, Utah in homeless services decided to split the state up into 13 different local homeless coordinating committees. So that's what LHCC stands for. And you can see there how the state is divided into those LHCCs. Mountain Land, so this gets confusing because Mountain Land is the COC as well as the LHCC. Same thing with Salt Lake. So Salt Lake is the COC and the LHCC. If you are not familiar with this organization, I encourage you to look at where you're located. And if you are not already engaged with your local homeless coordinating committees, we really encourage you to do that. We are moving in a direction with homelessness funding where we're allocating funding out through funding formulas to the LHCCs. And the coordination for determining what the priorities are and determining the service providers and gaps is happening on that local level. So if you are not already engaged in your LHCC, please take note on where you are and connect with us, and we will help get you connected to the right people. Sarah, did you want to cover this?
Sure, I can. I will cover for Jennifer if she's not on. So our RFP for FY21 homelessness funding had priorities, or we indicated that we will emphasize activities equal to diversion, emergency housing and shelter, distinct housing needs, and programs that provide client self-sufficiency, including placement and meaningful employment, occupational training activities, and/or special services. Karen, this is where you can jump for joy. Next slide. Yep, FY21 funding will meet the unique needs of the homelessness, including the subgroups: families with children, transitional aged youth, single men or single women, veterans, victims of domestic violence, individuals with a disability, including behavioral health disorders that may be mental health or substance use disorders, individuals who are medically frail or terminally ill, individuals exiting prison or jail, individuals who suffer from other serious challenges to employment and self-sufficiency. Next slide. Thanks, Russell. Homelessness funding projects and activities.
Click, click, click.
Oh, dang. I forgot about that in the morning session. Don't know why those actions are there. Didn't you guys put this on a Google Doc and that's still doing that? That's crazy. So you may be familiar with our funded project types, right? We fund through our mainstream homelessness funding, typically diversion for individuals and families, emergency shelter that include operations and essential services, and essential services may include case management, permanent supportive housing case management, rapid rehousing, which is case management and rental assistance, street outreach activities that is engaging with individuals who are unsheltered and connect those individuals to services, also providing urgent non-facility based care and transportation for those individuals. Transitional housing, case management, operations, and essential services, and that may include those that are not just domestic violence care, and I'm glad you're jumping. Homeless prevention activities, case management, short and medium term rental assistance, and thank you, Tricia, for making that an eligible activity again. We all know that there was some challenges in funding that a few years ago. Funding support for an HMIS comparable database for domestic violence service providers, or other projects and activities that create or support housing for homeless individuals and families. Next slide, please, Russell. Nicole, this is you.
Thanks, Sarah. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, let's see how it
Is it-
goes. Yep,
All
go
right,
ahead.
hopefully it's better than it was. All right, all right, all right. Would sing Matthew McConaughey. We're looking at federal compliance requirements. Some of the things that we look for when it comes to federal compliance requirements are the activities allowable? Are the costs
Nicole, you're super like muffled.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Keep going. Let's see.
Okay. Are the activities allowable?
No.
Costs?
No.
Nope, you got worse there. Do you want me to go? Nicole?
It was
Can't hear
working
you.
earlier.
It was working great in the morning session. So while Nicole tries to work that out, I'll take over. This is Debbie. So the federal compliant requirements, we have these go over all of our grants for consistency amongst all of them. And so the four main things that we look for on federal compliance requirements are your activities allowable? Are they the funds being related to achieving the grant goals that you were awarded and stuff? Are the costs allowable? So are they necessary, reasonable, and proper to again, maintaining that goal and achieving that goal of ending homelessness and stuff? A lot of times when you're talking about allowable costs and you're thinking, are they necessary, reasonable, and proper? You kind of think of what would it happen if this ended up in the news? Would there be a public outcry and stuff? That's kind of how I try to think about things when I talk about are costs allowable and are they reasonable and that kind of thing and stuff. The next, are they allocable? So are we probably allocating them to not only the correct time period, but also to the correct grants and within terms of your either federally negotiated indirect cost rates or your cost allocation plans or the de minimis rate for your administrative costs. And then last, are the costs appeared in the correct period? So remember, these are one-year contracts with the option to extend, but we operate as they are 1 year. So the costs that you're going to be are from July 1st to June 30th. So one of the questions that came up in the morning section was, what about costs for people who are working at the end of June, but they don't get paid till July? Those would still need to be calculated and submitted for reimbursement with that June reimbursement and stuff. And so, especially during closeout time, that's when we're trying to look at making sure we're having the correct contract period. Questions on that? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Debbie. Moving on to attachment A. This is Lainey with the state. Just there's kind of a funny comic there. It says, of course, our love is unconditional, but first we need you to agree to our terms. So attachment A is the terms of use for your contract, terms and responsibilities for that. So it's a pretty long document. It's probably about 6 pages. I definitely encourage all of you to read through that. It's really good to know the terms of use for your contract. However, we did want to highlight some of the really important ones. I mean, they're all important, but we really wanted to just make sure that these were really highlighted and that you'd make sure that you understand all of these. The first one is number 4. And just so you're all aware, attachment A and B, we did try to send those out in an email to everyone yesterday, so you should have access to that. Let us know. We can definitely get those to you otherwise. So records administration, essentially we, as a state entity, we just ask that you keep record, a pretty pretty detailed record of all of the payments that are made under your contract. We, as a state entity, will actually hold on to these records for up to 6 years, and that is for auditing and monitoring purposes. When we are going through audits or monitoring, you definitely will be made aware of that. It's nothing that we do, behind your back or anything, and we will contact you accordingly for that. Moving on to conflict of interest, this is pretty straightforward. We as state employees, as well as political subdivisions, we can't receive, preferential treatment or favorable treatment, such as gifts and compensation for, like a bribery, if you will, for getting more money, that kind of thing. So pretty straightforward, just that this is what it is, and we're not going to accept any favorable treatment in that condition. Conflict of interest, or excuse me, that was conflict of interest. Contract responsibility, we just ask that you abide by all of the terms within your contract as a contractor, and if you are a contractor that does a subcontract, we ask that you kind of reiterate that to your subcontractors as well, to make sure that they are abiding by those terms within the contract as well. Moving on to termination. It is perfectly within the agency's rights to terminate a contract at any time for whatever reason. We just ask that you give us at least a 30-day written notice to do so. And so written notice, and we will do the same. If anything ever comes up that we need to terminate the contract, we will certainly let you know that if that's something that we need to do. That's actually moving really smoothly into non-appropriation of fundings or changes in laws. It's number 13. Anytime there's a change in legislation or laws or anything like that, we will let you know with, again, a 30-day written notice exactly what's happening, whether that's wholly termination or partially termination. That is also in line with anything there's a change in available funding, and that can really come down from legislation acts, from the governor, as well as from the president. We're hoping that we may continue to have all of these funds, but sometimes that can happen. And again, we will have a 30-day written notice to you if that does happen. Shoot, yeah. Any questions? Okay, moving on. Just so you all are aware, we are not liable for any performance commitments, penalties, or liquidated damages that accrue after the effective termination date. Let's see here. Moving on to number 17, assignment and the subcontract. So unless otherwise approved, contracted agencies are not allowed to wholly or partially assign, transfer, or subcontract any of the responsibilities of their contract. You certainly can do this, but it needs to be something that's negotiated with us, the state entity, and it needs to be definitely done in writing as well. Number 25, amendments. Amendments certainly can be done, and we'll go over this a little bit more later in the slide, but it just needs, again, it needs to be done in writing and negotiated between you and the program manager, the program specialist over your LECC. Number 26, insurance. Pretty straightforward. We just ask that as a contracted agency that you maintain commercial general liability insurance, commercial automobile insurance, that's if you have any vehicles that you're using within your agency, workers' compensation insurance for all employees and subcontractor employees, and also professional liability insurance for licensed professionals. The limits of this insurance is no less than $1 million per person per occurrence and $3 million aggregate. And then lastly, publicity. We just ask that you receive written approval from the state if you desire to advertise any information that is in your contract, and this also includes any logos that are used by the state or anything of that matter. I think that covers all of attachment A. Again, you should have received this within an email. Let me know if you would like to receive it again. I'm happy to send that out as well. Thank you. Moving on to Nicole, if she's there.
Yeah, thanks, Lainey.
Okay. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys hear me?
Yes? Question mark? How does everyone else feel?
Sounds good.
No, I can barely hear her.
Okay.
I switched out ear pods and I'm trying to, because it's not barely hear her, huh? Okay, let me see if I can hit the volume up on this.
Is that any better?
That's a
Yes.
lot better.
Okay. Okay, sorry you guys. I really am. So fiscal requirements, as long as y'all can hear me, I'll get started on that. From starting with records administration. This is all in attachment A as well. Like Rainey said, we can send that out to you guys. It should have gone out with the Zoom meeting, notice. The contractor shall maintain all records necessary to properly account for the payments pursuant to this contract. All records shall be retained by the contractor for at least 6 years after the contract terminates. If you do have an audit within that 6 years, you need to make sure that the audit is complete and that the 6 years have passed before getting rid of any records. You will allow the state and federal auditors and state entity staff or any designees access to all records related to this contract at no additional cost for audit, inspection, or monitoring of the services. Access will be made by us during normal business hours or by appointment. Moving on to number 5, financial reporting. The contractor must annually inform the state entity in writing whether it is a nonprofit corporation, where and whether it meets or exceeds the dollar amounts listed in Utah Code 51-2A-201.5. So this has to do with nonprofit pass-through entities. For example, if you have greater than $25,000 in federal funds flowing through your agency, you may have to do an accounting report. Or if you're a pass-through agency with more than $1 million in funding, you will have to be subject to an independent audit, is what that is talking about. Moving on to payments, number 15. Payments will be made within 60 days after a correct invoice is received. So the key to that is a correct invoice. You know, obviously, if we have any issues or there's a misrepresentation within the claim, it's going to take an additional amount of time to work that out. The acceptance by the contractor of final payment is if there is without a written protest filed to the state entity 30 days after the termination or expiration of the contract, it shall release the state from the claims and liability to the contractor. So basically, make sure if we make payment to you that you file a written protest if something doesn't seem appropriate within 30 days after the termination or expiration of the contract. No protest can be filed later than July 15th for any contract that terminates or expires June 30th. Payment for services shall not be deemed an acceptance of the services and was without prejudice to any claims that the state may have against the contractor. If this contract is funded in whole or in part by federal funds, then federal regulations supersede attachment A to the extent of any conflict. And we have spoken to this in the past. We follow federal funding guidelines with all of our contracts to make things easier. So we're going to align with those federal regulations, superseding attachment A, if in the event that comes up. Travel expenses, authorized travel costs will be paid according to the rules and per diem rates found in the Utah Code. Invoices containing travel outside of these rates will be returned to the contractor for correction. The contractor or grantee is solely responsible for the payment of all applicable taxes relating to payments received from the state or for the state services. Unused funds. Any funds paid by the state that are not appropriately used as authorized by this contract must be immediately returned to the state. And with saying that any unused funds from year one will not be rolled over into the renewal period. Since we've had a new change things up a bit, and we actually have renewal of contracts for up to 3 years, it's important to note that any unused funds in year one or in year two, if renewed into year 2 or 3, they will not be rolled over into the new year renewal. Ineligible expenses is the last thing I'm going to talk about here for a moment. The contractor expenditures determined by the state entity to be ineligible for reimbursement if they are because they were not authorized by the contract, or if they were inadequately documented and payment has been made, they will be immediately refunded to the state. It is also important to note that the state can withhold subsequent payments under a contract until recoupment of overpayments is made. Do you have something to add, Tricia? Nope. Okay, we're good. Okay, moving on. I think we're heading to attachment B with Russell.
Attachment B. Thank you so much, Nicole.
You're welcome.
So attachment B, so if you're thinking about attachment A is what does the Department of Workforce Services tell us that we need to tell you guys? So that's the rules that you're going to see a lot of that same stuff no matter what you do with DWS. Attachment B is Homeless Programs Office and what specifically we as an office expect from you and kind of our rules. So first off, oh my God, let's see if it works. It's a little humor for you. What is attachment B? Are you guys afraid to ask? It's basically just the bones of your contract. It tells you all the rules, and we're going to go over it real quickly here. Maybe. Oh my gosh. Give me 1 second. Sorry. There we go. I'll drag this over. Can you see that? Can I get thumbs up?
Now
No?
we can. Now we can.
Now we can? Yeah. Okay. So we'll scroll up. So we'll go over this real quick, give you a little overview, and we'll take a little side detour to talk about a couple things that kind of tie into this. So the first piece of your attachment B is number 1 here, and this is specific rules related to what funding source your agency has. So if you wonder what funding source you have, it's going to be in your award letter, it's going to be in your contract, and you can also ask us, and we're happy to let you know what funding source specifically funds each one of your programs. And you see here it says 24 CFR part something or another, or you have your Utah code. If you just Google those different lines, it'll bring up the code for you and you can read it. And if you have any questions on it, we're happy to help you interpret it. Make sure you follow each of those different regulations. So moving on, we have our compliance here. So we'll talk about amendments and what that process looks like, but we do request that any changes in your scope of work or your budget, please get them to us by May 1st. Earlier is always better. If you know you're going to need to make a change, talk to us. Let's get that conversation going. But we're trying this year to have all of them done by May 1st, which gives us enough time to do the emergency ones that may come up, but to also get them back to you and makes it easier for everybody. So we have that line in there. And we also say any rules that we put into the attachment A or attachment B, like Lainey said, pass those on to your subcontractors if we have agreed to do a subcontract. They're going to follow the same things just like if they were spending the money directly from us, and we're going to expect the same standards from them. Number 3, eligibility. So for each different funding source, as you see here, we have our ESG, our HOPWA, state funding. They all have different rules about who they serve, how they serve those individuals. Obviously, HOPWA stands for Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS. It's going to have some specific guidelines that have to be met regarding who it can serve. And it's saying here that you're going to follow those rules, and you're going to serve the families with TANF, you're going to serve persons with AIDS with HOPWA, and follow the rules for each of those federal funding sources or state funding sources. Policies and procedures. We do have specific policies that we as a division, as Housing and Community Development, as an office, as Homeless Programs Office, and as a department for Department of Workforce Services, we have different rules and things that we follow. They're all found here. If you go to that link, and I also put it in the chat at the beginning of this meeting for where we're going to post these slides, that has all of our stuff. We try to be really transparent about what we're expecting from you, what to expect when we come out to monitor or anything like that. So if you have questions, that's always a great place to check first, and then you feel free to follow up with us. We also expect you to follow your Continuum of Care, which Tricia went over at the beginning. And if you look up, oh, it's down a little bit. We'll go down a little bit. We expect you to follow the coordinated entry, different rules that Continuum of Care has set for your area. Annual contract training, you're in it right now. This is it. This is our annual contract training. We usually do it in person, and we typically require anybody to participate in homeless funding to come up to Salt Lake or come down to Salt Lake and participate in it in person. We are doing it digital this one time. Hopefully we can do it in person again next year. We do miss seeing all you guys in person. It makes it a lot easier to talk and have conversations. So thank you for attending. Ongoing training. You are required to enter into HMIS if your agency is able to do so. And our HMIS team can outline what that means a little bit later. And I think it's outlined a little bit later in here too. But we require you to attend the trainings to get certified, to enter an HMIS, to get a username, everything like that. And then we also have this part here, and if you want to read over, it's about case management. So if you have anybody funded with our state dollars, whether it's federal, whether it's state directly, they need to be certified with the Department of Human Services as case managers. And this applies even if they're not technically a case manager, that's not their title, but if they act in a case management role, and that's defined here where it says, assisting persons directly. Anybody that's served with homeless funding, we're going to consider a vulnerable population just by the nature of homelessness itself. And we're going to request that everybody that's doing that have this certification to kind of raise the standard and have the same standard across the whole state of what you can expect for care for those individuals. And as Tricia pointed out in our morning session, it's also something good to put on your resume if you're a case manager, to say you're certified with the state of Utah, with the Department of Human Services. And those certifications do last for 3 years. They'll follow the person, not necessarily the agency. So if you get it at one agency and you move to another one a year later, you don't have to get recertified, it'll follow you there. And it just, like we said, just tries to make sure everybody's getting that same quality of care. Anything you want to add, anybody from homeless programs? Okay. If you have any questions on it, it is kind of a newish thing. I think last year was the first year it was fully in effect. It's pretty easy. The test isn't overly complicated. I've taken it myself and passed it. So if I can pass it, I think most people have no problem with it. But it does provide good information. Sahil.
I wanted to say that you shouldn't sell yourself short. Quick question.
Thanks, man.
The is it 3 years from when they pass it?
It's from when you submit it and it's approved.
Okay,
so
perfect.
We keep a copy of that. If you have questions like, did this person get approved? When was it? We have a copy of that database that Mr. Pete Caldwell, great guy from Department of Human Services, shares with us, so we can look that up for you and let you know. And we are reviewing it when we're doing our monitoring to hopefully give you a heads up and say, hey, this is how many people you have at your agency. Is that right? Is that not right? How do we get it where we want to get it? But great question, Sahil. Thank you for the confidence boost. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just a follow up on that, because I mean, I know that you said it's anyone that necessarily interacts with the homeless population. So I'm just trying to understand, as far as my diversion team's concerned, will they need to do this? Because they do work with them, but it's not necessarily in a case management capacity. It's a very light touch approach.
I would still say do it. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. If you need help filling out the form, it's only one page, and it's just basically saying this person's worked in homeless services for this many hours, and we're good with them getting this certification. If it creates a burden, definitely let us know, but I think it's pretty reasonable, and that way we do have, like I'm saying, that level field of care for everybody that's receiving our funding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sil.
Hey, Russell, to follow up on that, it's Patrice. Yeah. So I see that with diversion. I'm thinking with intake, where they're just putting them into the system, that we wouldn't require for intake. Is that correct?
I defer to my manager for sure. Tricia, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think thinking about it in a way that I believe there's some trauma-informed care, conversation that takes place, and So if you just really think about the purpose of it and working with vulnerable populations and trauma and things like that, I personally think that it's a good idea for anybody that's interacting with vulnerable populations. And then as Russell mentioned, I personally think it's a great opportunity for people that are employed by your agencies to get a certification for their resume, right? And something to add to their skills. So, I mean, we can talk more, and if there's any questions about specific staff that you have, we can certainly talk through it, but I just think it's a good idea.
Okay, that's fine. That works for us.
Great question though, Patrice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else about case management certification? I put the link for that in the chat. Definitely give it a look. You can look at the exam, you can look at the FAQ for it, and we're happy to answer any questions that come out of that. Okay, moving on, number 7. If you do receive our funding, we do expect that you're going to, like we said, participate in coordinated entry with your continuum of care, participate in diversion, utilize the VI SPDAT and the full SPDAT according to your COC. We'll talk about that later with our data team about what that means for state contracts. And we are, as a state, as it states in our state strategic plan on homelessness, we're a housing first state. So we expect you to also have that mentality whenever possible. We know it does fit a little bit differently for everybody, but just keep that in mind whenever you're implementing these programs. All right, HMIS, they have a whole thing on data standards that Lynn will go over later, but we do expect within 5 working days to have that data into the system. If you're a victim service provider, we understand you can't use HMIS, but you do have other ways to gather that information, and we still expect you to meet HUD guidelines as appropriate. And it brings us to the pit. Do we want to look at the annual plan, Tricia? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up, okay.
Sorry,
let me
I was
pull that.
muted.
You totally, I couldn't tell by your mouth. I was like, I don't know if that was okay. Can you see that?
Listen, I'm just trying to, comic relief. Come on, y'all.
I like it.
Yeah.
This is loosey goosey. It's already 2 o'clock. Can you see the website there?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so if you go to housing.utah.gov, it'll take you here. You can also do that, but it gets you the same place. If you go to the bottom here, you'll see our state strategic plan, and then you'll also see our 2020 homelessness report. You click on that, here you are, this is it. So this is a culmination of the point in time count, the housing inventory count, and the system performance measures. So we put it into this nice report. We give this to the State Homeless Coordinating Committee. And like Tricia said in the morning, there's decision makers that look at this and help decide what we as a state need. So that's why we talk about it. That's why it's important, is there are people looking at this and making decisions based on it. Whether it's the most accurate information in the world or not, this is what we have. And this is what we use to really drive conversations about homelessness in each area. Anything you wanted to add about that, Tricia? I know we have our state data here.
Yeah, I might just say, I think it's really important for everybody that is involved in receiving funding from our office, and even not receiving funding from our office, that we'll talk more about data quality and what that means later. But I just want to reiterate, I know that Russell said this, so I don't mean to repeat him, but I want to emphasize how important it is to have accurate data coming into the HMIS system, into your comparable databases, the point in time count, that we're as organized as we can possibly be throughout the state on that point in time count, and the housing inventory count. Russell mentioned this. I mean, a really good example of how this information is being used for decisions is actually through funding allocations to the local homeless coordinating committees right now. And there is a funding opportunity that we have out there right now, and the way that and it's related to the CARES Act and COVID-19 response. And the way that that funding was determined for each local area was based on county poverty data and the point in time count. for your areas. And so just an example of how data is being used to make funding allocation decisions and other funding decisions. I can't tell you or emphasize enough how much this report is looked at by legislators, by other department leadership. And if we're not telling a good story or an accurate story in our data, then it might hurt us. And so just want to emphasize that the importance of that. And I encourage you to review this report if you haven't seen it already, and take note when you're reviewing the report about how you fit into this picture, this data picture, and hopefully make those connections for yourself and your staff. And if your staff who enter information into HMIS, I encourage you to make those connections. So that's my soapbox on that.
Love it. Any questions about this before we kind of move on back to attachment B? Thank you. I think it was Lynn that threw it in the chat. Thank you, Lynn. Definitely give it a look. It's worth your time. Back to B. Okay. So that's point in time. Housing inventory count is a very similar thing. That's just measuring how much services you have in your community, how many beds of like rapid rehousing, emergency shelter, permanent housing. And just, I don't know, put a name to a face to a name. Point in time count, that's mostly Joseph with our office. Housing inventory count, that's mostly Michelle Walton. Data initiatives, that's everybody on the HMIS team, but also a lot of Walton. She does a lot of our data stuff. Data initiatives is just kind of a catch-all for any other data stuff that HUD or maybe the state of Utah wants to have us do. You're going to help us participate in all these things because, like Tricia said, it contributes to everybody's funding. It contributes to homelessness as a whole. We are trying to end homelessness in the whole state of Utah, not just one community. So we kind of look at this as one big part of that picture. All right, any questions? Moving on, technical assistance. We can and will provide technical assistance if you need it. And we will monitor you throughout the year. So keep an eye out for those from us. We'll send you an email, we'll send you a request, and we'll get that done. We're not really the boogeyman. We're not out to make anybody's life miserable. We're out to improve outcomes and help you run better programs. So just try to keep that in mind whenever you hear from us. Fees, can't charge any clients fees. Easy enough. Like Lainey said.
Can I ask a question about the client fees?
Yes, you can.
You went really fast over that, and now I feel bad that it was supposed to
No,
be easy.
you're fine. It's one line. So I'm like, if you have questions, let's hear them.
I know. What do you mean by client fees? So for example, we have a transitional housing complex, and they're on like a graduated rent type system. Are you saying those type of fees, or you're talking about like a late fee or a penalty fee of some sort?
Rent is fine. I mean, rent's allowable in every statute. You can see the ESG, TANF, all of it. Fees would be more like to come into our program, there's like a $25 background fee, or there's some sort of fee that's just imposed for you to access the services. It's not related to you, living in an apartment, or you're not really getting anything out of it.
What about a deposit that they could get back?
Deposit's fine. Anything related to rent, and I'd be happy. Okay. Kristen, and I apologize. Which agency are you with?
Safe Harbor.
Safe Harbor. Kristen, I'd be happy to reach out to you guys at Safe Harbor if you have questions on it. Okay. It's very specific to like something that you as an agency are gaining that's unrelated to like an implementation of a service. And I doubt that you guys are charging it, but we'd be happy to clarify to make sure that it's not considered a fee by that definition.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
And Kristen, you did a great job on the radio the other day.
Oh, thank you.
Which radio station, Tricia?
Oh, what was I listening to? It must have been KUER. That's basically.
I think it was an NPR. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's check it out. That's awesome.
She did a great job representing the nonprofits and the challenges that are coming across with the coronavirus and the pandemic. Am I right? That's it. But you did a great job.
That was the general gist. Thanks, Trish. Appreciate it.
Love it. citing workforce services in grant program promotion, excuse me. Like Lainey said, if you're going to have us, or if you're going to promote any grants or any funding that we pass down to you, awesome. We love it. A lot of people should be doing it. Get the word out. We just ask that you cite us in a way that we approve of. So if you have any questions, if you want to cite us in a flyer or on your Facebook, just let us know. We'll make sure you get the right logos, most up-to-date information, so that you're representing DWS and Housing and Community Development. It seems silly, but the legislators like to see the funding that they, give down to us is going to good causes, and we like to really promote what we're doing and what you guys are doing to end homelessness. So definitely, if you have any questions, it's super easy. We've had agencies ask for it before, and it's no big deal at all. Okay, that is it for me for a minute. I'm going to pass it over to Nicole and Debbie to go over 11 through 18-ish, and then we'll catch back up and finish off attachment B.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? All right. All righty. Money, 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 money. Let's talk about some money stuff. Invoicing. We love. Stop laughing, Russell. Stop laughing.
I love the energy, Nicole. We need it. It's very sleepy.
We need it when we're going to talk about this stuff. Okay. So, invoicing. We love to get invoices once a month. At least quarterly at a minimum. So we'll make payments to the contractor based on receipts of itemized billing at least once a quarter, preferably once a month. Payment withholding. This is kind of the important part of that. Record keeping practices and or reporting to HCD. If it's not conducted in a timely or satisfactory manner, we may withhold part or all payments under this or any other grant until such deficiencies have been remedied. So one key to that is if we decide to withhold any money, we will notify the contractor that any deficiencies have happened or are occurring, and we'll give you guys the opportunity to correct that so that we can release payment to you. Changes in budget is number 13. The budget in web grants is the basis for payment, and it's kind of like it's our Bible to payment. That's what we're going to look at. You guys have been negotiating back and forth with DWS probably very recently on budgets, trying to make sure we get that all cleaned up so it's very clear and concise what we're paying to you. The contractor may not make any adjustment in the budget from funds category 3 to category 1 or to category 2. And where we're talking about that, it's basically the difference between program fees versus admin costs. We don't want program monies being commingled with administrative costs. So you can't actually, unless you have prior written approval by DWS, make a budget request change to adjust anything from category 3 to category 1 or to category 2. Expenditures in excess of those budgeted in category 1 or 2 may be considered question costs. Resolution of question costs normally results in the excess being refunded to the Department of Workforce Services. And we'll talk a little bit more and take a look at a budget screen where you'll actually see in the administrative costs versus the program costs. So if that's a little fuzzy to you right now, if you're new to this process, we'll clarify that a little later. Do we have a question?
And then there was just the American Express.
No question? Okay. I'm going to keep moving on. If you have a question, feel free to throw it in the chat. Expenditures in excess of those budgeted in category 3 are generally not questioned unless you have exceeded the amount approved in subcategories. For example, if your budget has subcategories of salaries, wages, program space costs, insurance, and you exceed those subcategories, then they will be questioned, and we have the ability to request that excesses be refunded to DWS. Financial cost and accounting system. This basically says that we, the state of Utah, are a pass-through governmental entity, and we're required to report on an accrual basis. Therefore, we require you guys to provide accrual basis reports of expenditures. Now, you can maintain your financial and cost accounting system most likely in any way that's acceptable to you, whether that be cash basis, accrual basis, or modified accrual basis. But we just ask that those reports and expenditures be available to us. An example of that is if you have, because we accrue expenses, we had a question in our earlier session where somebody said, okay, we have somebody who has billed in July for June work. You have until July 15th to go ahead and submit pay requests based on June work so that we can actually accrue that and make sure that we have it documented and as a part of our financial statements for the end of the fiscal year. I hope that makes sense. Accounting records, it says again, must be kept a minimum of 6 years. We talked about that. You further agree that all program expenditures and revenues will be supported by reasonable documentation. Now that can be electronic for us, but you need to make sure that you keep original copies of vouchers, invoices, receipts available for audit once a year, depending on what we require from you. I will probably do a desk audit and ask for all documentation at a minimum regarding your contract. You will be notified at the beginning of your contract as to what you're responsible for. At a minimum, it'll probably be a general ledger backup for all your expenses. At the most, it would be all documentation, including time cards, receipts, invoices. Is there a question on that or anything related to that? I went through it pretty quickly. Okay, DWS cost principles for reimbursement agreements. This just emphasizes that we align with federal cost principles. You can locate the federal cost principles of the appropriate federal government on numerous websites. There's a nice little table that Russell just scrolled down to showing the Federal Code of Regulations, Section 2, Subpart 200E. What I want to specifically talk about is the compensation for personal services, because that can cause some question. So the portion of time a person devotes to a program should be disclosed in the budget as a percent of 40 hours a week. So you've probably experienced that when you submitted budgets to us. We wanted a percentage of point FTE full-time hours budgeted. So you've got that down. But employees who are compensated for one or more grants or from programmatic functions must maintain time reports which reflect the distribution of their activities. So if you have somebody working on one or more grants, make sure that we can delineate between which projects they're actually working on. If their time exceeds 40 hours in a week and the contractor or you guys want reimbursement for time devoted to a DWS program that's over 40 hours, 2 conditions need to be met. There must be a perpetual time record that's maintained, and there must be prior written approval obtained from the Department of Workforce Services Finance Contracting Division. So make sure if you plan on billing us for anything over 40 hours a week by one of your employees, that those 2 conditions have been met. DWS will not reimburse for personal expenses, i.e. spouse travel, any unrelated business activities, telecommunications or cell phones that were used for personal use, undocumented allowances, payments and actual cost of meals that may exceed per diem on the same day, and business lunches that are not connected with training. The contractor is required to pursue reimbursement from all other sources of funding available prior to drawing from DWS funding. So this is an important thing to talk about. If you have funding from other than the Department of Workforce Services that you're able to draw on, you need to draw on that before billing us for it. In the instance that any combination of other sources of funding and billings to DWS is greater than necessary and reasonable costs, supported by the audited financial records, collections over and above the audited cost shall be refunded to DWS. So if we pay more than you are actually reimbursed as a result of additional funding sources, we're going to ask that that be refunded to us. Administrative expenditures. We will reimburse administrative expenses as allowed by the budget terms of the agreement. Most of you likely have a NICRA, and that is what must be used for administrative expenses. If you do not have a NICRA, you have the ability to opt for 10% of modified total direct costs. Other than that, you can request for reimbursement based on direct administrative expenses. So that's where this category 1, category 2, and category 3 expenses fall. Category 1 would be your NICRA, your modified total direct costs. Category 2 would be your direct administrative costs if you do not have a NICRA or you're using modified total direct costs. Category 3 are your actual program expenses. And you'll see a slide we'll talk about here in a little bit that'll hopefully help you visualize what we're talking about. Matching funds. If required by the funding source of the contract or DWS, HCD, request for proposal where match requirements are not being met by DWS, the contractor agrees to commit an equal amount of funds from fund sources not awarded by DWS as matching funds, and will provide documentation of those funds upon request by DWS. Now, examples of those matching funds could be in-kind contributions, subject to prior approval by the Department of Workforce Services. Documentation that we would look for would be copies of checks, letters from donors describing the grants with the non-federal match. The match should be one of these 4 things, A, B, C, or D. Expenses which are reasonable and necessary for proper and efficient accomplishment of the contracted program objectives. Allowable under applicable cost principles, so they need to be allowable expenses. They need to not be paid by the federal government under another award except where authorized by federal statute. And these matching funds need to be in accordance with the appropriate federal grant being matched. So hopefully that was a lot to cover. Do you have any questions?
There's a question in the chat. It says, a question on overtime. What does DWS written approval look like? Do you need a separate approval for each staff or program type for every drawdown?
Debbie can probably speak more clearly on this. My understanding of it is you're going to have a specific email and or letter from me that's going to come saying we authorize those overtime hours, and I believe you need to have it per employee. That's my understanding.
Most of the time, the reason we talk about overtime is because we want to make sure that we're paying for overtime that is needed and not, hey, our executive or director works, 100 hours a week, and therefore we're going to charge to you the overtime time and only the overtime time and not the additional time. That's actually where this came from in our policies and procedure, because that is something that had occurred in the past and stuff. So really, truly, if your employees have to work overtime, like we understand there's pandemics going on, we've had to work more hours and stuff like that. We really, truly try to defer to your policies and procedures that you currently have within your overtime procedures. But if you are going to be charging the overtime effect to these grants, we really need to understand that and just give that approval.
Now, Debbie, do they need to do that by employee at employee level?
Yes,
or
no, I would just say if they were going to be doing it, be it's something that can be quite simple. It doesn't have to be this big long thing. Is hey, we've had this crisis, all of our employees or the employees that are charging to the grant, those type of things. Does that answer the question?
Summer said, sounds good, thank you.
Hey, Debbie, this is Jenna from Utah Community Action. Really quickly, what's the process again to ask for overtime? Because
you really should be contacting your program specialist who will then review it and talk with finance. We really truly are, a lot of times that's not in the budget, so we want to be making sure that you're not going to be screwing your budget up a lot because you've had to have this overtime. A lot of times the overtime happens because you've had staff leave that was in the budget, so then you're filling in that time with other people and stuff like that. So it isn't within your budget, but those are just things we want to make sure of. So just talk to your program specialist about it, and they'll get back to you with the approval.
Great, thanks, Debbie.
And it probably is important to note that we do not intend upon paying over the actual budgeted amount for the contract or what has been allocated and awarded. So if you're paying overtime hours to employees, that's probably going to come from somewhere. So that's something to keep in mind. And I think that's it for me for a moment. We'll come back here.
What is next on the slideshow?
Oh, I do think it's the budget. Should we talk about the budget?
Yeah, but first.
Oh.
Do you have something, Russell?
I was going to say, we do have to finish out B. I can do it real quick.
Yep,
okay, go for it, Russell.
And then I'm going to do something.
Okay, I love it, Trisha. Can you give a quick, just about matching funds? I just don't want anybody to be too confused or worried. I know in the first session we talked about who could expect to get a request for matching funds from us.
If you should have already been contacted, correct, Russell? If they are going to be requiring matching funds. So
yeah, I was trying to get up to that without being like, you shouldn't. All right. Yes, Debbie, go ahead.
Yeah, if you're required to have matching funds, you should have already been contacted by your program specialist. Our matching funds requirements comes from that shelter operations H2H money that's specifically for shelter operations, and so therefore there are only a few select people that are required to actually have matching funds.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want anybody to freak out and start scrounging together match. So we're lucky enough we do it for ESG.
We do it for you for ESG. That's correct. We do that for you.
Thanks, Debbie, for doing that. It makes everybody's life easy. Okay, 18, real quick. We'll blow through these. 18, protection and use of client records. All of the funding sources, HMIS itself, they all restrict who you can share information with, how you have to protect client information. It's very important. If you have any questions about it, let us know, but please keep everything secure and don't share it with others without their permission. Grievance procedure. Each agency that receives our funding should have a procedure for if a client needs to bring a grievance in regards to the program or anything at all, that there's kind of a hierarchy for what happens with that. And eventually they can talk to us about it as the funder and the provider of the funds. So if you have any questions about what a good one looks like, we can definitely share it with you. If you're a newer program and you're kind of starting from the ground up, feel free to reach out to your program specialist and we'll help you with that. Licensing and standards. If you have any licensing restrictions for what you do or your facility. We expect you to meet those, follow those. Code of conduct. This is kind of an interesting one. So we do have a code of conduct that we're requesting as DWS, as our department. But we do understand that there's other departments within the state that also have code of conducts. I specifically think of the new shelter licensing rules. So we're trying to blend those to make it easier so you don't have two very, very similar code of conducts that you have to get everybody to sign and keep track of. So if you do fall as a shelter provider, a licensed shelter, just keep an eye out for some guidance from us here in the near future. But we do expect everybody to have a code of conduct in regards to those that we fund, and have that in their employee file so that we can review it when we're out monitoring or looking. And we can provide an example copy of one of those if you have any questions on it. Agreement renewal, like we talked about, we do plan on doing 1-year agreements with the option of 2 renewals, 2 1-year renewals. We're kind of fleshing that out here in the next little bit, but just know that the decision to renew will be at our discretion and with mutual agreement. Okay, last one, background checks. It's a really long one. You can see it's like 2 pages. The long and short of background checks is we serve a very vulnerable population, and the people that you employ and that we fund with these dollars serve people that need protection. So our goal is anybody that's interacting directly with an individual has a background check done, and that they meet a certain standard for that that's outlined. Same with volunteers. So if you have a volunteer that's interacting with this population, we do expect that they have a background, or they be within eyesight of someone who does have a background performed on them. And you can kind of see that here, outlines different things that go into that background, what we expect. If you have questions on it, feel free to reach out to us and ask us and say, hey, does this meet the standard? Does this not? Those are annual backgrounds that must be performed. And then the other caveat to that is if another funding source requires you to do a background, we don't expect you to do then 2 backgrounds for the same person for the same thing. And we will allow other background checks that meet our standards to be used. And it outlines it here. So you can see here, it's if you do have a background or you do have a funding source that requires checks, or if you don't, ask us on it if you have questions. We try to be flexible. We really want to make things easier for you guys as providers. We know you have enough on your plate already, but we also want to make sure we're protecting the individuals that are served with these dollars and keeping people safe from that very small percentage of people that are looking to take advantage of them. Any questions on that? I know it can kind of be a complicated idea for such a simple thing. And there are laws in place that are outlined here. If you look at Utah code, there outlines who has to have a background check, why it needs to be done. But like I said, the short of it's just to protect individuals being served with these dollars.
Hey Russell, this is Krista. I have a quick question.
Yes, Krista.
So for the background checks, we have many households who were served by rental assistance on the programs that were funded. Not all of those case managers are funded with this funding. Do we need to do background checks on everyone who has access to those clients, or just everyone who has access, who is funded by the program?
We're only going to check those that are funded by our program in the homeless programs office. But I would say you probably would want to have them background checked if they're working with this population, just to protect your agency and protect the clients. But we're probably not going to be raising. Kale says Kale's coming in hot. He knows.
No, they have access to any of our clients, and they're one-on-one. They're needing a background check regardless of who's funding them, who's paying for them.
Yeah,
you talk about volunteers, right?
Well, what I'm actually looking at is compliance with this DWS policy of the BCI background check versus the background check that our agency.
Well, I mean, Russell mentioned and volunteers as well. So what I'm emphasizing is that they're anybody who has access to our clients, regardless of funding source, needs to be background checked. Does that make sense?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Yeah, I think the question is probably more around when you come to look at the BCI specific compliance, will you be looking at all households or all case managers?
Sorry about that, Russell. I thought I was muted.
You're okay. You're okay, Kel. I do appreciate the input, and this is, you know, it's a safe space. It's an open area.
Yeah, it's just a matter of our clients, and we're ultimately responsible whether they're funded by whatever source. If they come in contact one-on-one, they're supposed to have a background check, or like say, be with someone who is background checked and they can visually be in sight of them.
Keep an eye. Anything on that, Tricia? I think my point was just, I'm not going to look at people that aren't funded by us. So if you want to look at your other funding sources and maybe double check with them for the people that aren't funded by us to make sure you're in compliance with their restrictions. But Kel does make a good point. Any vulnerable population, we would want to make sure that they're interacting with backgrounded individuals. But maybe we can talk later, Krista, about maybe specific instances. I know I've talked with Paul a little bit on some case-by-case kind of stuff.
Yep, that would be perfect. It's actually a follow-up question from Paul, so that would be great.
I had a feeling,
Yeah.
an inkling.
Yeah, I
Thanks,
mean,
guys.
I think we usually just, when questions about background checks come up, one of the things that we really want people to think about, and Russell kind of already mentioned it, is that, you know, the background check policy to us is about keeping people safe, period, right? It's about keeping people, the people that we work with, that vulnerable population, safe. And so maybe just like keeping that frame of reference, and if you've got staff that aren't necessarily funded through the grant, but that are interacting one-on-one with clients, it's something to seriously consider for your program.
And then we have Summer, you asked DHS, DACS system appropriate for this? I'm not a background expert. Tricia knows some from her after school program days.
A little bit. What does DACS stand for? I'm good at acronyms and I don't recognize that one.
Department of
Human Services.
So it's the state background for the state licensing.
Oh, yes, yeah. So, and basically what this policy says is that if you're required by another state entity to have background checks, those count for us. Yeah, we don't want to have you double doing anything. Yeah. If you're not required by another entity, the good example too is another thing that applies to this is if you're required by an educational institution, like, I mean, this might not happen in homelessness, but like the University of Utah or Utah State or Department of Human Services or Department of Health, if you're required by any other state entity to have background checks done, we will count those. Okay.
So it was going to be short, but it turned into a good conversation. So thank you guys for the questions. It really is, you know, it's in there. If you have questions, let us know.
I always feel like somebody's watching me and I have no privacy. This is an 80s tune day. What can I say?
Oh, perfect.
For background checks.
Okay.
Oh, anything else? Okay, Tricia, it's all you.
Okay, so I want to wake everyone up, and is it time for a break? Or can we keep going? Because we don't want to run out of time, but I'm feeling like because I can't see people's faces, I don't know where everyone's at. It's so hard.
Trish, I'm nodding. Not nodding asleep, but just nodding.
Oh, okay, I can't see you. Okay, so here's a quick game, okay? So whoever answers the fastest, I can't throw candy at you. You get a point. That's it. That's all you get.
The answer is, Tricia, the answer is 4.
No, it's not, Sahil. Sahil, this is a question for you then. How about that? Name 2 things reported in the annual report that we just released.
I'm sorry, you're breaking out. Can you? Hello?
Name two. No, I'm not. No.
I'm sorry. I know, I'm serious. You're breaking out.
Okay. Name two things that are reported in the annual report that we just released.
That we just released.
That the
Oh,
homelessness
man,
program.
Point in time.
Travis beat you. He already got it. You're too late.
I just pinged you.
Oh, what?
I'm sorry. It's just, I'm sorry. My phone's just like really cutting. I'm not joking.
Okay, fine. You don't get to play anymore. Travis got it. The answer is the pit and the hick. Those are two things. Here's another one. Someone tell me, what is the state committee that your data is reported to for your contract?
Coordinating Committee.
Say again, Peggy.
SHCC.
Yep, the State Homeless Coordinating Committee. Good job, Pam and Peggy. Okay, here's another one. What are the 13 areas called that the state is divided into?
The LHCCs.
Well, who was that?
Sahil.
Sahil, good job. You did it. You did it. Okay, here's another one. How much does the case management certification cost? Oh, good. So many
Lots of people.
Yes, it does not cost anything. Okay, here's another one, last one for now. Where can you find the forms you need for this grant? Management. Close. HCD website. Brent, you got it. HCD website. All of the forms that you will need will be on our website. Okay. I had one more. Yep, Sarah got it, but she is on our team. It's housing.utah.gov. Okay, one more. If you subcontract out funding from your contract, do you have to pass on the requirements in attachment A and B? Yes.
Yes, wow.
Yes, 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 yes. I love it. Okay. All right. Well, that was a little break. Okay. Let's keep going. If we need to, at 3, we can take a quick 5-minute break. How about that? Okay.
All right, Nicole, I think it's back to you. No, we did that one.
Is it?
You missed
It
the
might
me.
be. I don't know if we're at attachment C or not.
Here we
Oh,
are.
it's me. I need a good 80s tune for this. I don't have one. I'm sorry, you guys, or I would sing to you. Attachment C. The budget narrative is used to determine all allowable costs. Yes, we love the budget. It's our friend. Expenses outside the budget will be questioned and could be denied. So keep that in mind. Let's go through web grants. I want to show you guys how to create a claim in case you're new to this process. So you're going to go into My Grants, and you can see at the bottom there, there's a listing of your grants tracks. So we have a test grant for new HPO global grants. Go ahead and go into that. And we want to look at the budget. This is how to access your budget. The budget is used to determine all eligible expenses. If it's a new year, it's a new budget. Oh yeah. So even though we're doing different or renewed periods, you're probably going to have a different budget for each renewal period. So keep that in mind. All right, next slide. I'll try to cruise through these, you guys. So this is what I was talking about earlier. I know I made a lot of promises, and this is where it comes to be. So indirect costs. Category 1 justification, Category 1 indirect costs, Category 2 direct administrative expenses, and the justification. So this is where you have your admin costs. This is where your NICRA is coming in. This is where your modified total direct costs are coming in. If you have neither of those, then you can elect to do direct administrative expenses, and you can see the breakdown of direct administrative expenses that could possibly be anything from insurance to space costs to utilities, salaries, and fringe benefits. If you have a NICRA, it's important to note you need to use your NICRA. It will automatically default to using a NICRA. If you do not, in the event you do not have a NICRA, then you can once again elect the 10% de minimis or direct costs. So the next slide, your HMS, yeah, you're right, Russell, you're living right, you got it. HMS project title. So it's really important that you guys keep this in mind, because as we have issued contracts, we issued them, we kind of umbrellaed them maybe under one large one large umbrella, and then lettered them by A, B, C, or D, or E, or F. Most people had only A or B in their budgets, but as you were awarded these, that's how they came to be. So it's really important that you keep track of letters A and B and how the expenses are breaking down before it. Karen says, oh, favorite board meeting is starting in a few. All right, darn it, Karen. So pay attention to the letters, and you want to make sure that you break down the expenses appropriately by your letter. Now, HOPWA and TANF are likely going to be separate, but if you had other awards, they may be grouped together, especially if you're a larger entity. You can see here by the description, we have on the first line 0.84 FTE case managers, quality assurance supervisor, clinical support, and then how much is being requested. It's permanent supportive housing is the project type, and then you have your project letter. So as you've been negotiating these contracts, I'm sure this seems somewhat familiar to you. All right, let's move on to invoicing. So we prefer, as I said, monthly invoicing for faster payment. At a minimum, we want to see you guys throw in invoices at us about quarterly. Fiscal quarters are desired, October through December, January through March, etc. So when you're in web grants, you already have your general information. When you enter the system. For invoicing us, you're going to want to go to claims, and yearly expenses prior to June 30th need to be invoiced by July 15th. That's important to add. We've talked a little bit about that. So go into claims. Thank you, Russell. And under the grant tracking, you can see we have claims 1 through 4 already submitted. You can see these people have been living right, and they've been invoicing on a monthly basis. Rock on. So we have some that are approved, 1 submitted, 1 in editing, 1 submitted. If you want to add a 5th claim for, say, for example, the month of, let's see, we have 7/31, 8/31, 9/1. So let's say we're going to invoice for the month of August. We go ahead and click add. And we're going to claim general information. We're going to make it type reimbursement, and we're going to enter the reporting period, and we're going to hit save. Now the components of this are your general claim information, your reimbursement, your comments and status, and supporting documentation. So right now we're at the reimbursement piece of this. We've already, if you look at the bottom of this slide, you can see under general information, it's been checkmarked complete with the last edited date. And so now we're into the reimbursement phase. You want to go back to return to components. And then we're going to actually go into reimbursement. So here's where you're going to give us the breakdown of all your expenses for that period, preferably that month. You're going to have your indirect costs, which are directly calculated from your program category 3 expenses. That's important to note. So when we go to look at pay requests, we're going to say, hey, they have this NICRA. We're going to calculate salaries and wages, take the percentage of NICRA, and that's what we think we should be charged in indirect costs. If there's a discrepancy, that's probably going to hold up your claim. This example shows that they have salaries and fringe benefits for direct admin expenses. So most likely this organization did not have a NICRA. They did not select a modified total direct costs. Okay, next slide. All right, so after you've inputted everything, they had $500 in salaries, some fringe benefits. We had category 3 expenses with 2 different projects. So 2 different awards were going on there. All permanent supportive housing. When you're finished entering all this information, we're going to mark it as complete. And you can see here where I've talked about the 4 components. There's general information, reimbursement. Now we're to comments and status. So here's where you want to enter information that's related to the claim. For example, if there is something related to the indirect admin calculation, if you've made an adjustment or there's something that's just a little bit different, make sure you put it in the comments section, so that not only we're notified of what's going on, but we have an idea that you're aware of this discrepancy and you've hopefully attached supporting documentation to support that discrepancy so that we can approve the claim. So the comment status section is down at the bottom, and any anomalies could always hold up your claim. So keep that in mind. We want to make sure that we have everything as consistent as possible. Okay, so now we're at kind of the final section. This is the supporting document upload. At a minimum, we're going to require from you a general ledger or transactional detail report. You will be notified based on your award what backup documentation is going to be required for each contract. It may require time cards, copies of receipts for supplies, or invoices from subcontractors. We may require full documentation. We may require just the general ledger. It all depends. So keep that in mind. Regardless, all documentation is going to be needed to be kept for audit and desk audit purposes. So even if you have a contract where we're only requiring a general ledger to be submitted as supporting documentation, once a year, Nick is going to probably do a desk audit on you and ask for all documentation, time cards, everything. So make sure you're keeping that handy so that we can get to it if needed. Once you've uploaded the supporting documentation, you should be ready to mark it as complete and hit submit. All right. So adequate documentation for reimbursement, dates of expenditures, no accruals. We actually want the date of expenditures up until July 30th. Receipts with prior dates of services must be verified to avoid duplicate payments. If you're giving us receipts, we need to see the actual date on the receipt so that we can verify that we're not making duplicate payments. A description of the expenditure. It's important with purchasing cards or big box vendors like Walmart or Amazon that we actually have a description of the expenditure, not just a copy of the receipt that says supplies. Or something / highlight / and it's highlighters. I mean, we need to actually know what a description of that is. We need to have included reports from your accounting software, a general ledger, the detailed transaction report, salaries and benefits information would also be helpful depending on what is required of you. Keep in mind, there are different requirements for different awards, different contracts. The amount of purchase is important. If you're a nonprofit organization, sales tax is not reimbursed because you are already reimbursed for that. We are trying to avoid duplicate reimbursements. We don't want people coming in and being reimbursed for sales tax by the Department of Workforce Services and then also receiving sales tax reimbursement from the state as a whole. DWS will review and reperform work as needed. Questions about documentation will result in delayed reimbursement. And we all want our money something soon. So we know a lot of you guys work, you know, and are on these tight budgets, and we want to get this money to you as fast as possible. So that's certainly important to us. The subrecipient monitoring procedure is important to touch on. Like I said, I will do a desk review at least once a year on different awards. It includes reviewing supporting documentation and validating different reimbursements. I will send an email, or your program specialist will send an email indicating the desk review is going to be occurring and when it will occur and what we require from it. Once completed, you will be sent information indicating that supporting documentation is no longer needed. So the key to this is once we actually do a desk review, you should not need to submit as much documentation as you have in the past. So that's the good news. We'll notify you that all the supporting documentation is no longer required. We may want to see a general ledger from you, but that may be it. So pay attention to that, and that's something to look forward to. How about them apples?
Hey, I got a quick question on your documentation requirement.
Sure.
Sorry, this is Jenna from Utah Community Action.
Hi, Jenna.
Hi, how are you? It's nice
Good.
to talk with you, all this stuff. Hey, you've got on there no accruals. So I just wanted to see how that applied to payroll. We accrue back our payroll based on the number of dates that were in each month for the pay period. And I just wanted to make sure that that was still okay.
Yes, so you have until July, you know, obviously we want to see the date of actual expenditures for the payroll, so the time period that they worked. Assuming that's the time period they worked, you have until, for example, on the cutoff, July 15th to report June expenditures. So you do have time to do that. And then, you know, we just continue that on throughout the phases of the contract. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So can I give it a little bit more? When we're talking about no accruals, we're really talking about the dates of the services and stuff. So we're not wanting you to put in like, oh, we're going to be purchasing this, but we haven't, so we're going to accrue the expense. You know, so it's for actual things that have actually occurred. Those type of accruals are allowed. It's the accruals of things that have not happened that are not.
Great, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. Any other questions for Nicole? All right. We'll talk real quick about the attachment D scope of work. I love how you've added in these things to give us a little giggle, Russell. Good job. If you could stop adding things to my scope of work, that would be great. Hey, at least our scope of works are pretty dang consistent now after a couple of years growing pains, right? budget and scope of work changes. I'm wondering if you mind if I just read through a scope of work real quick. I don't even know if you care to bring one up, Russell, except I don't know if it's helpful to look at how we are reflecting the performance measures in the scope of work or not. What do you think? Okay, so your project, the first thing is you will notice on your contracts when you receive them, there's a contract purpose, and that's pretty generalized. It's inserted by our contract team this year. And then in the scope of work, we have project purposes, and those are, I'm just looking at one on my computer. So those are taken from your projects Part B. Thank you for pulling one of those up, Russell, and making it bigger. You think of everything. So your project purpose should be specific to what we're funding, and even though we allow some amendments to your contracts as far as the budget and the scope of work performance measures go, we want to stay as close to what your application was for as possible, because that is ultimately what the State Homeless Coordinating Committee approved as recommended by your local homeless coordinating committees, right? So everybody's expected to meet the goals identified from the state strategic plan, which is the goal 1, reduce the number of first-time individuals who experience homelessness. Goal 2, reduce days spent in emergency beds or shelters. And goal 3, reduce the number of individuals who return to homelessness and increase the number of individuals who are placed in or retain permanent housing. So we expect that everybody will follow some basic expectations from the funding that you're receiving. The agencies will follow the outlines in the contract, Attachment A, Attachment B. And then for each project type, we have the consistent measures that were placed in your scope of work for existing projects for the specific project type that you are funded, and we are just measuring the performance based off of FY20 data that we already have in HMIS. Now for new projects that were funded, which we have several this year, you had worked with your program specialists to set actual targets, actual numbers for each measure. But the thing we're keeping in mind is that every project type is reporting within the same box. So we can provide a more accurate picture across the state of what homeless services look like, right? So we expect you, Michelle will talk about this, and people have mentioned it before, your data to be timely and accurate, because what's in HMIS is used for reporting. And it supports the system performance measures for the state overall. So be cognizant when you are completing intakes or doing an annual assessment or interim assessment on your clients, knowing that your data quality is impacting many things. And also how we communicate effective services being provided with this funding to our stakeholders. So your performance data will be reviewed on a quarterly basis. And for those of you who are not entering into HMIS, you'll get a form that you will complete for that quarter's measures only. And then that's put into our repository for statewide performance measures, which are reviewed quarterly by our office. The new piece this year is, last year that it was new that we did all the case management certifications, right? This year we're asking that agencies for all projects that enter into HMIS or a comparable database measure case management activities consistently across the board. And that what we had discussed in a few meetings and maybe put out for discussion or comments in the Utah Homeless Network meetings is an expectation that case management will be measured in 15-minute increments within HMIS. So what does that mean to your case managers who are doing data entry. We expect that the impact will be minimal. It's just recording one more service, and Lynn has provided us with great videos that she has recorded and are made available for your viewing pleasure at any time that focus on service entry. You could take the whole HMIS recertification training through a video. You can, you know, she talks about data quality and how to fix data issues through those videos, and so they're super helpful. And we're so thankful that she is personable enough to do videos that are effective and useful. Yep. Thanks, Lynn. She just posted some, she posted the data standards link in the chat where we talk about that consistent entry of case management activities. So we can really start talking statewide about effective case management activities as it pertains to our grants or even our service system. So look for joining in more conversations about that this funding year.
Sorry. Yeah, Sarah, is it okay if I interrupt you again?
Yeah, please.
So yeah, there's a
jump in, Lynn.
So thank you for promoting our YouTube channel. But yeah, this data standards document that I just shared, it does describe what we're expecting with the case management data entry in 15-minute increments. And then just some other things that we're working on. We would love your input and review because it is in your scope of work now, and so it is something that we're expecting you to do in HMIS, but it's still in draft form, so we want to make sure that it works as best as we can for the processes you have. Russell said it earlier, we don't want to put more work on you guys, but we do need to like standardize this stuff somehow. So yeah, please review it, and then I will kind of, I'll go from there.
Yep. And if you also can review it, there are additional things in there that we are recommending are done on a consistent basis. One of them is when you are providing rent or deposits for your clients, we ask that you are actually using HMIS to record that service and enter the amount. Our reporting that we align with, of course, you all know this, is the HUD standards, and HUD considers rental assistance rent. So if you're paying rental assistance and last month's rent, we would expect 2 services to reflect rent services, right? So that's May's rent and also last month's rent, and then record a deposit as an additional service if you're paying a deposit with your funding. And that doesn't have to be just for those that are funded with the HESG source. That is what we're expecting and communicating that everybody is doing with regardless of what funding source they're using to provide housing for their clients with. Is there any questions on that? Again, like Lynn said, their recommendations, their guidelines, their drafts, it's a fluid document. They're not set in stone, but that would really help ease our reporting instead of going back and manually checking what reimbursements included, what was actually rent or what was the security deposit and the difference between the two. Lastly, on attachment D is your monitoring outlines that talk about how each applicant was requested to fill out a subaward or a subrecipient PARA form, and submit it with their application for FY21 funding. And that helps us maintain the expectation that DWS has in assigning, I guess, a risk level to our awardees and monitoring consistently to find ways to mitigate any risk level that could be identified. And those are simple factors that you know, your agency is managing a very large sum of money, and a good bulk of that is coming from federal sources. We just want to make sure administration is consistent and applicable to those funding sources, right? So you will always hear from us once, and our monitoring process has now been a self-review of how well you're applying your policies, and and your policy should align with our guidelines of program administration. And then you kind of, as an agency, rate or score how consistently you're implementing your policies, and then we just review the evidence that you provide to us during monitoring, and we agree with your self-evaluation, or maybe find ways that you can improve. And so that's pretty much it about monitoring. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I think Sahil did. I'm going to try to unmute him here.
Oh, Sahil.
It's not working though. Sahil, you're broken, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Probably participating by phone, maybe.
Weird. Anyways, Lynn, if they have feedback, agencies do, what's the best way for them to give that on the document you put in the chat?
There is a form that I've embedded in the document in that introduction. So if you have any ideas or anything while you're in it, you can just like type it away and put it in there, and we will get feedback. Yeah.
Sahil, I think you have to hit *6 or something to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man, I thought you had put me on mute, Tricia, for good.
Oh no, not for good, just for a minute.
Okay. Hey, so can you just clarify and just talk a little bit more about the process of, like, if we are case managing individuals and what, like, the expectation is tracking to the 15 minutes in HMIS? Because as I understood it, these were just usually services in client track that or in HMIS that we added. So we were, I mean, can you just speak to that with, like, what the expectation is and with case notes and all of that when you're saying track to this minute?
Tricia, you want to hit that?
Yeah, can I just, I'll start and then I'm going to give it to Lynn. Can anybody tell me which senator passed a bill this year that was related to case management in the HMIS system? Nobody? Peggy is correct. It was Senator Jake Andrick. So that is one of the reasons to just start with that answer to that we are focused on what's happening with case management in the HMIS system. And with that, I will pass it on to Lynn.
Yeah, so what we're actually asking for case management tracking right now is that anytime case management happens, it's tracked as a service, just the case management services in 15-minute increments. So if you met with a client for an hour, you would record it as 60 minutes. If you met with them for an hour and 10 minutes, you would do, what is that, 75 minutes, round up. And so it should be fairly straightforward. We're allowing for case managers or people to enter in that time, both with direct client interaction, as in you're sitting there with the client, but also indirect client interaction, like preparing for a meeting, or maybe when I was a case manager, I left a lot of notes, and that took a lot of time because it was on people's doors all over the community. And those were case management times, but like I didn't meet the client. So stuff like that. So for now, that's
a lot of time in the weeds.
Yeah, it can be a lot of time.
That is a lot of time in the weeds, because I mean, like, you could have a person that has like 46 services if you're trying to collect that just on wow. Okay.
Yeah, and the idea is that we want to be able to consistently say, this is how much time it really does take to serve these clients in the best way possible. And maybe it's this particular project type, it takes a lot more case management time versus this other case management project. Right now, we don't have a really good consistent way to make that identification that, like, all of this time that you spend serving those clients is not recorded in HMIS anywhere. So yeah,
but that's a lot of data. That's a lot of double data entry, right? Because I mean, we track that for our system, but then to put that into HMIS again, that's a lot of double data entry for providers, right?
Gail, can I also say, though, that it helps us talk with our stakeholders. If we can get consistent data from all agencies, regardless of what your funding source is for your project types that you're entering into HMIS, just our funding alone, you're familiar with your budget. How much of your budget do you think salaries and benefits are? And so you take that, right? It's probably 70%, maybe. You take that, maybe it's 80%, maybe it's 90%, and you times it by the 49 contracts that we have. And that's a lot of justification that we are trying to do all the time, every day, almost, to folks who, you know, really want to see the results of what the funding provides. But not only that, but UHMIS, or Client Track, actually has, you can choose the units of measure that you're entering in. And so a lot of places, if they are entering in services at all, will choose one unit of case management. We don't know what that is. There's no way to compare one unit to, say, minutes or hours or whatever it is the practice has been at your agency. And we're just trying to bring everybody together in a cohesive manner so we can more accurately represent the good work that our funding is doing, funding supply or salaries and benefits at all these agencies, 49 agencies.
And yeah, Sahil,
No, I completely understand that, but
I was just going to say, let's look at it together, and let's talk a little bit more about it, because you're in a little bit different situation where you do have like your other system, where you're tracking a lot of data. And so maybe we can look at that together. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. I just, like I said, it's just kind of hard when we have two different systems, because I'm just trying to figure out, you know, like we have one that we put all our case notes and everything in, and then to have like case managers do the exact same thing somewhere else, as you can probably see, if you're dealing with a lot of clients, it can add up to a lot, right? A lot of time, but we can definitely talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Maybe there's some different solutions for that, because it's a really specific situation, I think, for UCA. I think the other thing I would add to this, because again, there was legislation passed about HMIS and enhancements in the HMIS system related specifically to case management. There's a couple of things with that I might just quickly say. And one is that we're looking at what other enhancements can be made, and if there's other platforms that we need to be using, and it does get complicated for agencies that are using multiple platforms. But the other thing is that it has been really challenging. There is not a lot of not confidence from us, but confidence from talking heads that case management is the best investment for client outcomes. And so it's another thing that we're thinking a lot about, and Sarah mentioned this, is how can we really say, like, this is how much time it takes to help a client, and these were the positive results from that case management support. You know, and so all of this is like not just for the fun of it for us, you guys. It's like, it's trying to figure out how, ultimately, it's like trying to figure out how we tell the story and help homeless services tell the story. So I totally hear you, Sahil, and it does cause different challenges for different agencies, for sure.
But you don't want another case management system to enter into because of this bill, right?
Yeah, and let's continue this dialogue, because I completely understand where you guys are coming from as well. I think we can definitely figure something out to make it so for, as a provider, it's, you're not sitting there just spending all the time doing data input.
Yeah. Right. We hear you. We hear you too, Lucas.
Yeah.
I hear you, and I know what it feels, well, I would like to say I know what it feels like to have to do a lot of data entry as a provider. Yeah, I just, to tie it all together into like pile on, and then I'll let it go too. But just from what Trisha was saying is being able to recording all of this case management time in HMIS allows people who aren't with your agency to see all that work that your agency has done for that client as well. So to help serve that client better and bring it back to making it that case management system. Whoa, my cat's on my desk. You guys can't see it. You probably can just heard that she knocked it over.
Now that you're awake now, aren't you?
Oh my goodness, she did it again. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to turn off the mic now.
Okay. So I forgot to mention that anybody who is registered probably should have received their scope of work and budget in an email this morning or last night, so you can review it. And unless you're an agency who already has an executed contract, it's in there too. But your projected or your example of your scope of work was also included in the award notification letter that was distributed through the web grants negotiation process in May. So you've had a little bit of time to review it and digest it, but we're happy to answer questions at any time on it.
Question for Lynn, I think, in the chat. I heard you mention that service time and service should be entered for rental assistance. Is rental assistance administration being considered as a case management service?
So one of the items in that standard data standards document is a recording a service for financial assistance. So like you would record the rental assistance and maybe you paid $750. You'd record that as a separate, unique financial service. If case management was involved in paying that, maybe you met with them at the same time or something, like that would be a separate case management service with the time associated with it. I hope that makes sense. I hope that answers your question.
You got kind of low there towards the end of it, so they are two separate services. That's okay. But it just, I mean, doing the recording of a service, if you're paying a rent or a deposit, those are separate service entries in HMIS, right, Lynn? And it just helps us pull out of HMIS instead of spending hours and hours and hours. I don't know if any of you were contacted by me a year or so ago when I was asking, hey, I've got this claim that you submitted in February. Do you remember what portion of it was really rent? What portion of it was other financial assistance? Because we didn't, I mean, our budget is fixed now, so we are collecting that. And even as I've reviewed some of these budgets that I downloaded last night and this morning, some of them are still kind of iffy on their description of rent. So rent assistance is an individual line item in the FY21 budgets where they weren't before, but rent paid as last month's for a deposit purpose is still rent. So we may need to, I don't know, we can tackle that beast when it comes. But Tricia, do you want to talk about the question about the contracts being sent out? Because I know that you met with them today.
Yeah, we are working on contracts with the contracts team right now. We've been hustling over the last couple weeks. Again, I'm going to use blaming everything on the pandemic for as long as I possibly can, because that actually has been part of the issue with our contracts not being out yet. We had high hopes to have them out before July 1st, and that was the plan, but that's not how this pandemic has treated us well at all. So hopefully within the next week and a half, we're gonna really buckle down and get those done with the contract team.
We were well on our way to getting those out early this year, but then state revenue and budget precariousness, all of that stuff happened too. Anyway,
yeah.
So many of you have been in web grants. I'm sorry, Tricia, are you done?
No, you're good. I think I'm looking at the time, so I'm just getting a little nervous.
Okay. Been in web grants where you've been able to maybe claim an amount that was above your budgeted line item. That's changed now. We're locked down. It just caused a lot of problems with what threshold were we meeting when we required an amendment to the contract because of budget changes. So now you can only claim the amount that's on your budget line item. And then if you need to change that, you need to get onto the housing.utah.gov website and go to grantee resources and download a copy of the budget variance form. And so we need to have that submitted. We're trying to set a threshold where we don't want to look at budget changes until you're halfway through spending your money. So I don't know what that looks. It looks like different things for different agencies. I have agencies that claim all of their award in one claim. So just be really aware that the fact that what's in your budget and painstakingly negotiated with Nicole and Brittany and Debbie is kind of what's set in stone for now, and any variance from that needs to be submitted on a variance request form. Again, what ends up being paid for needs to be as close to your application as possible. Sorry, did you have a question?
No, This is why I muted him before.
He's trying to do some real work also as
muted him.
We're listening. Okay. Changes must align with application purposes. Justification is required for any changes to the budget or scope of work. Changes should be communicated to HCD as soon as identified. So keep an eye on your budget and kind of try to project where you need to end up being so that a budget variance form can be submitted in time to process your next claim and nothing's held up. There is a threshold now that we are still monitoring internally that we may hit that threshold and have to do an amendment to your budget, but we're going to try to monitor that as best we can in-house. Okay, next slide, Russell. Thank you. Again, approval may take up to 10 days, but if you email it to htdhomelessness@utah.gov, we share that email, the program specialists, and have practiced now and are pretty good about alerting others when there's emails that aren't ours that we have maybe inadvertently read. So we're more on top of it. And oh, this slide does say HCD will only consider budget variance requests when agencies have spent out at least half of the total budget. Scope of work change request procedure, and it's also on the same form, I believe, as the budget variance. There's a portion there. If the budget request impacts the scope of work, please describe how, and we will work with HMIS to ensure that our internal communication is seamless and everybody is where they need to be, right, in their contract performance and expenditures by May, so we are not scrambling at the end of the year to fix things. Approval will take up to 10 days, or we will ask for more information in your request. Okay, I think it goes back to, oh, here is a beautiful screenshot. Thanks, Russell, for inserting that new, oh, it just still says budget change. Maybe it's not the budget variance. It's really the same form that was available last year. Oh, real quick, also on the same webpage that is called Grantee Resources, there's a purchase equipment approval request that if you have an equipment budget in your FY21 approved negotiated budget, if you're expending more than $1,000 on any one type of item, right? It's like if you're buying 1,600 pens and they're going to cost $1,000, I don't know what kind of pen that is, maybe the digital ones that transcribe. Okay, anyway, if you're purchasing anything, even if our grant is only paying 500 of it, if you're purchasing anything that is one item or cumulative of this, submit that purchase or that equipment purchase request form to us also, so we can meet our auditors' expectations of proper communication and approvals for the expenditures of our very highly sought after funds. Great. I will turn that over to Joseph, I believe. Thank you.
Just one thing real quick. I want to wake everyone up. We did not take any breaks, and we did in that first session. So if you are listening, which you all should be, type in your local homeless coordinating committee name. There are 13 different local homeless coordinating committees. Look at this, I love it. Okay. Weaver, Salt Lake, Weaver, Iron, winning. Okay. And then here's another question for you. Who can answer this? What year was the audit that changed everything we do about performance measures and outcomes in contracts and with the strategic plan? Lucas got it. It was 2018. Pam, Andy, Stacy, good job. Love it. Okay, carry on. Just wanted to wake everyone up there real quick. Summer, good job. Stacy. Sorry. I was not as gray then. That's true. Okay. All right, Joseph, it's all you.
Okay, Russell, can we go to the next slide? Thanks. So we have made some updates to the performance measures that are in your contracts for this year in an effort to more closely align them with the goals and performance measures that are set in the state strategic plan on homelessness that was adopted basically a year ago. And so mostly that just involved doing some pruning and really trying to focus those in on just measures that align with the things that we're really focusing on in that state strategic plan. So if you had funding last year, you may notice that you have fewer performance measures. And the ones that we're really going to be focusing on and using to determine performance when we're considering renewals next year are the ones that tie into these priority performance goals from the plan, which are to have fewer days spent in emergency shelters, fewer individuals returning to homelessness after leaving to a permanent destination, fewer individuals experiencing first-time homelessness, and having more individuals successfully retain their housing as they're leaving permanent housing projects like PSH. And so all of them are tied really closely to that. There are some performance measures in your contracts that are mostly there to provide context, but the ones that we're really looking to measure improvement in from this year compared to last year are the ones that tie closely in with the state strategic plan. And Michelle is going to go over those in a little bit more detail as we go forward.
Okay, thanks, Joseph. So yeah, hi, I'm Michelle. For those of you that don't know me, I work mostly with the reporting for the state homelessness funding contracts. So you will become very acquainted with me and my emails from the HMIS email throughout this year. So one of the big things, if you have been a recipient of state homelessness funding in the past last year, if this is not your first time, one of the things you will notice a big change in the scope of work in your contract with the performance measures is if your project is an existing project in HMIS, regardless of if it was funded in FY20 or not, if it exists in HMIS, you did not set targets this year. We are going to be using the actual performance data of what your project did during FY20 and use that data to then set the performance measure of either increasing or decreasing, depending on what's appropriate for that measure, by 10%. So we're just looking for you to do better, basically, for your performance to do better. There are, like Joseph mentioned, there are certain certain measures that don't have that performance expectation on them, that they're just there to put the other measures into context. So we're tracking the number of people that are served in your project, and we're tracking the number of people who exit your project, but we're not, we don't have a performance expectation for you to serve more people or serve less people or have more people exit or less people exit. Those are to put into context the rest of the measures, because not knowing, if we know how many people exit to a permanent destination from your project, but we have no idea how many people actually exited from the project, that's just like a floating number that doesn't really mean anything. So they don't have expectations, but they're still in your scope of work to put the rest of the measures into context. So that is like the big change for your performance measures this year. So in your contract, there won't be actual measures, but with the quarterly report, I will have there the actual like numbers of what the 10% increase or decrease, the actual number of what that is. So you'll have that in your quarterly report, but it will not be in your actual contract scope of work. If it was a brand new project for this year, so starting like 7/1/20, then you did need to set targets for that project because we don't have data to go off of. We also have a few new well, not new projects, but we have a couple of new agencies that are domestic violence service providers that you guys also have to set targets even though your projects are existing, because we don't have the HMIS data for them since you are not allowed to use the HMIS system. So if you have a new project and have not set targets for it, please reach out to whoever your contract person is so that we can get that done. And please review, please look at the measures that are in your contracts and the expectations or targets, like what's in there. Please actually look at them before you sign off on your contract for it to be fully executed. Because it is a pain in the butt to amend those once they've been executed. So please actually look at that. I would really love it if you would do that for me. So yeah, we will be fine. And then the other thing that you'll notice if you have been funded previously is that the SPDAT measures are no longer part of your scope of work. The VI SPDAT and the full SPDAT. So those, you need to be aware of what your COC's policies are with coordinated entry, with case management, whatever that might be, with usage of the VI and usage of the full SPDAT and whatever your agency policies are around using those. You still need to follow those, obviously, but it's no longer going to be part of the performance measures that we are tracking for your contract scope of work. So we heard you, you're welcome, they're gone. If you want to go to the next slide. Thanks, Russell. So here is just kind of our timetable for the year. It's the same as it always has been for those of you that have received funding previously. Your contract started July 1st. The first quarter ends on September 30th. So we'll do the reporting in October for the first quarter. So how we do this is you have, after the end of the quarter, you have 2 weeks to go in, make sure all of your data is cleaned up. Sorry, what measures and targets have needed to change due to COVID-19? Sorry, I was mid-sentence and saw Marcy's. I saw my name. If those need to change, you need to work with whoever has your contract. I don't know who you're with, Marcy, I'm sorry. So whoever that person is, Sarah, Lainey, Jen, or Russell, whoever that is, you need to work with them if those targets need to get changed. Oh, okay, so you need to work with Russell if something in that needs to change. Sorry, okay, so you have the first 2 weeks of the month after the quarter ends, so September through October 15th, to make sure everything is entered that was supposed to be for that first quarter. Everyone's entered all of the enrollments, all of the assessments have been done, anyone who needed to be has been exited, all your housing move-in dates have been entered, all of that. Make sure all of that is entered. Everyone who should be enrolled in your project is enrolled. Check your data, run your data quality reports, do all of that. And then on the 15th, we start pulling on the 15th. It's not, you have until the end of the day on the 15th. No, like Devin queues all of the APRs on the 15th. Like, that's what happens. That's the reality. We start pulling on the 15th. So make sure all of your data cleanup, all of your data is entered by the 15th after the 15th of the month after the quarter has ended. I send out reminders about these things too. So if you're new, it's your first time doing it, don't know what's going on, I send out reminders just to make sure everyone remembers, hey, the quarter's ending, we're gonna be pulling on the 15th. If you are a domestic violence service provider, we cannot pull your data, obviously. So you'll receive a Google form that will just have the questions that are in your contract scope of work, and you will just fill out whatever those numbers should be, hit submit, and it gets sent back to us. So you'll receive those at the beginning. So for the first quarter, you'll receive them at the beginning of October to be able to get those into us. Excuse me. So one other change that we're doing this year, you can see down at the bottom of this calendar, it says Q4 data from the previous fiscal year will be considered in the FY22 and 23 contract renewal process. Since we have to do the renewal process this year, but we've had to do the allocation committee, we have to do, decide on the next year's funding before the contract year is over. Like, that's the reality of it. It's not ideal, but it's what we have to do. So previously we've only used like the first 3 quarters then of data. So we've used data through like March. What we're going to do this year for any projects that are existing, we're going to use quarter 4 of FY20. So we'll use the April through June 20 date, April through June of 2020 through March 31st, 21. That's the data that we'll be pulling. Previously, we've just used quarter 1, 2, and 3. Now we'll use 4, 1, and 3 instead, just so we have a full year's worth of data to look at instead of only 3 quarters worth of data. If it's a brand new project, obviously we won't have that 4th quarter of FY20 because the project didn't exist yet. So unfortunately, we will only still have the 3 quarters of data to look at. But if it's an existing project, even if you weren't funded in FY20 through state homelessness funding, we're still going to look at that 4th quarter of data, just so we have a full year's worth of data. Does anyone have any questions about this reporting calendar? All of the funding sources, regardless of what it is, even HOPWA, all of them are on the same reporting calendar. They're all doing it this way. They send out reminders so that you don't forget that things are happening. Any questions about those?
I have a question.
Yes.
How many people, type yes into the chat, have looked at what was reported at the State Homeless Coordinating Committee this month on your data, your contract performance? Yes or no? It's okay if you say no. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Keep it coming. So if you have not had a chance to look at that data that was reported, please go to the public notice website. I think we've plugged it already, haven't we? Or maybe we just did this morning. I am getting it all mixed up.
I don't know.
Publicnotice.utah.gov. Go to State, Department of Workforce Services, State Homeless Coordinating Committee, and look at what was reported on contracts. Who is the chair of the State Homeless Coordinating Committee?
Emma Atkinson?
No. Spencer Cox. Lieutenant Governor Cox is the chair right now. We'll see what happens in a few months. But please go and look at that, because that is your data and your performance is very public. And so we want to help get a handle on that. And, you know, those are the requirements through the audit and for the State Homeless Coordinating Committee. So thank you for entertaining my questions. Any questions for Michelle?
No.
Okay, so this is just an example of the performance measures that could be in your scope of work. These are the measures for transitional housing. So if you're funded for transitional housing this year, these are your measures. But the other projects, they look similar, like client served, household served, number of leavers, an average length of stay, exiting to permanent destinations. One thing that we did add this year too that's a new measure is the number of participants who exited to no data collected, no exit interview completed. That's new. We're collecting that for every project, just for data quality, to see like how many people are exiting from your projects that you don't know where they went. No exit interview was done with them. They just disappeared. We're just curious to see what that looks like. So we are collecting that this year. That's new. The number of returns, we're only collecting if you're familiar with the number of returns to homelessness, System Performance Measure 2, it looks at like from 6 to 12 months and then from 24 months, however it's worded, number of returns in 2 years. So we've simplified it this year too, that we're only looking at the number of returns in the full 2 years instead of from 6 to 12 and then the full 2 years also. So we've done some simplification in the measures, like with transitional housing, that's a lot. It's less measures than we have looked at previously. So this is really similar to what all of your data, or excuse me, your quarterly reports are going to look like. Okay, yes. So HMIS team, we will still be pulling the data, the APR and the system performance measures. Since there is no longer the SPDAT measures in your scope of work, all of this data you can pull right from HMIS. There's not any measures that Devin's going to have to pull in a query from HMIS. So these are all things you will be able to pull directly from the system to replicate what we're pulling, what we're doing. I already talked about the Google form. So we're going to do the quarterly response form again this year. I think I got a lot of really good feedback. This last year, FY20 was the first year that we did that. And I think that it ended up working really well, and we were able to catch like some data issues early before they actually became data issues. So we're going to continue to do that this year. We have made some edits, and we're going to look at an example of that in just a second. But then just a reminder, we'll also be using that quarterly report data to determine contract renewal in FY22. So we kind of talked about that in another slide, but just a reminder. So if you want to go to the next one. So quarterly response form, this is an example. It won't look exactly like this, and we might make some tweaks to the questions, but we did add a few questions. Still nothing super difficult, but before it was really just data. It was about the data because we really wanted to make sure you were actually looking at your data. Because I had questions about if some of you actually even looked at what I sent you before, because I know some people didn't, because we had an issue with an agency that realized at the end of the year when it came time to apply for funding again, that their data had been reported wrong the entire year and they did not get refunded because they were not paying attention to their quarterly report and what was being reported. And I didn't know it was wrong because I didn't run their project. So that's where this really came from, was just a way for us to make you verify that you looked at your data to us, and to try and catch any issues before they became big problems. So this year we're adding a few questions to get it from a programmatic side too. So you'll see that there's support that you need from our HPO program specialists. So if you need any technical assistance from the programmatic side and not just from the HMIS like data side. So this is just a good place to be able to get that feedback in, get that help, kind of just an official way instead of having to just like shoot off an email to someone. Just a way to get that so we can hopefully catch any issues that might arise throughout the year on the programmatic side or on the data side before they become like big problems that we find at the end of the year when it's like too late to fix something. So there's the quarterly response form. Also, since FY20 was like the first year we'd done it, it was new. I was sending out reminders about it, but I wasn't like badgering anyone if they didn't respond to it. We had some agencies that maybe sent one back, or like, I think maybe we had a few that never responded, like never sent one back. I will badger you this year if you do not send them back. So be ready for that. I send out reminders about the quarterly response forms too. So you get reminders. I don't want you to forget about them, but yeah, if you don't send it back, I will badger you about it until you do. And then finally from me is the annual report. So when we have to do allocation committee in the spring with the refunding, we're going to be doing the not using the exact like our state fiscal year, your contract year. will be including the quarter from the year previous. The annual report will be your full contract year. So it will cover the data starting on July 1st, 2020, going through June 30th, 21. So same as it always does. Still going to be a narrative reporting covering like your progress for the year, like what'd your project do? Here's your fluffy question, like tell us what your project did, what happened, how'd it go, and then the outcome section, like did you hit your targets, did you not, did you improve, what improvement plans do you have, what technical assistance do you have, and then a reminder that like all of this is going to the State Homeless Coordinating Committee too. So the State Homeless Coordinating Committee will get your annual report. They will also get like your full years of data, and at those quarterly State Homeless Coordinating Committee meetings, I report on the quarterly data as well. So throughout the entire year, the State Homeless Coordinating Committee is getting your data. They're seeing your data. So please care about your data. Look at your data, review your data, make sure it's accurate. I would always rather report accurate data to the State Homeless Coordinating Committee. I want those quarterly reports to have accurate data. So if you find something that like the quarterly response form is the perfect place to do it, that after that point you realize, oh, like one of our case managers like didn't do any of their work after you'd already pulled the data, so we went and entered it, tell me, I will re-pull it because we want it to be accurate. But like you need to tell me like as soon as you find out so that we have time to also do that. So do you want to go to the next one, Russell?
I'm just going to add real quick about the annual report.
Yeah.
Sorry, Michelle, if you don't mind. I think you're doing a really great job at drilling that message in. And I want to emphasize it as well, because when we get those narrative reports back and you have an opportunity to tell the State Homeless Coordinating Committee why you're not meeting your targets or your performance measures and goals, it is not helpful for us to get like one sentence in some of those narrative reports. And I mean, this is all because there's always a why behind what we do in our office. And we're not just trying to make life difficult. It is that 2018 audit.
You're on the road?
Called us out for we were funding projects not based on performance measures and outcomes. So from a legislative perspective, they want to make sure that the investments are smart, right? And that we are investing in programs that get positive outcomes. That is the pressure that we are all of you and all of us are under. And so just wanted to emphasize that. Michelle, thank you for doing a great job. I just want to, from my perspective, how stressful it is to sit up there. Michelle and I sit up there and try to explain what's happening. So
yeah, and I mean, when we presented the final data at the August 12th State Homeless Coordinating Committee for FY20, I told them too, I was like, you have the final data, you have the full year's data, you also have their narrative report, and hopefully if you have any questions about their data, they've addressed that in their annual report. So like, that's the place to do it. If there's something in your data that you think somebody is going to question, that annual report is the place to do it. So it's not just for you to like talk about how the year went and tell like a great client story. Like it's also a place for you to explain like anything that someone might have a question about with your data, because we know like the numbers are numbers. Like, we don't know your clients, we don't know your program, the State Homeless Coordinating Committee doesn't know your clients, doesn't know the things that like your community struggles with, all of that. Like, this is your place to explain what's happening so that they do know. Okay, does anyone have any questions about that? I don't know what's if there's anything in that chat. No, oh yeah, that was all the yes and no's, okay. Is there any questions about your data? If you have questions, like throughout the year, especially, I don't know if anyone's on this call that's from any of our new agencies, but especially with our domestic violence service providers, if there's something that you don't understand in the measures, like how to pull it, what it's actually asking. I mean, that's true for anybody. If there's like something in your performance measures that you don't understand, like what it is, you have a question, with the quarterly reports too, just ask, please. And I would be happy to explain it to you because my head is so in this. Like, let me just talk to you about it.
Okay, so real quickly, if you are receiving either ESG or HOPWA funding, you will be required to participate in a report that's called the CAPER. These are different depending on which funding source you get, and the process is a little bit different. But if you are funded with either one of those, you'll be contacted by one of the program specialists in our office to help you understand that process when the time comes, and help support you in getting that data submitted so that we can provide the reports we need to the federal government for those specific funding sources. HOPWA is a little bit different. It doesn't get pulled from HMIS quite the same way, but for the ESG CAPER, it is a report that gets pulled from HMIS. Sarah Moore takes the lead on that in our office, and she'll be working with you when the time comes to pull reports and get those ready for submission, make sure they're all ready. But there are instructions available to all agencies on how to pull those reports, so you can be pulling those as the year goes on and checking in on them before you get contacted by Sarah as submission for that is approaching. And so there is a link to this HMIS reports cheat sheet on our website where you can find a walkthrough that'll show you step-by-step how to run that and what it's looking at. But we just wanted you to be aware that if you receive either ESG or HOPWA funds, you will be participating in this additional layer of reporting for our federal funders.
Sorry, I lost my mute button there somehow. It's been in the same place this whole time. So really quickly, I'm the last one, I think. So we saved the best for last, just in case you were wondering. Just as a reminder, all of these programs you're required to enter into HMIS unless you're a DV service provider. But it just as HMIS reminders, we have lots of sources for help. We already mentioned we have the YouTube videos, we have a cheat sheet for agencies to help you generate reports. And then of course you have me. You are always welcome to call me or anybody in our team. You're welcome to call me to get support with running reports. I think that's all I have on there. We're here to help you. Russell, can you change the slide for me, please? Sorry, thank you. As a reminder, our recertification, all HMIS end users are required to do a recertification once a year. We make that due on January 1st. All of your users will be notified about it around the beginning of December, and they'll have until the end of January to complete their recertification. It follows the annual assessment time frame that's allowable in HMIS as well. We did that on purpose. So keep your eye out for that. Also, if you are an HMIS end user, make sure you're receiving our newsletters, because that's where we'll let you know when the recertification is happening and how to do it, and etc. I found out that sometimes those newsletters are going into spam folders, so maybe check your spam folders. If you're not an HMIS user, but you'd like to receive our newsletters so you can get notifications about these sorts of things, just let me know. Either email us at hmis@utah.gov or email me directly, and I'll make sure you're on our newsletter list, if you will. And then for monitoring, so one more kind of monitoring. I think I've kept account, and I think we mentioned that there are at least like 3 different kinds of monitorings that you get to have as a recipient of this money. So there you go. The HMIS monitoring, all HMIS inputting organizations have to participate in a monitoring once a year. We use this monitoring to make sure that the data that's in the system helps tell the story of the people we're serving as best as possible, so that we can make those informed decisions. Because it doesn't matter how you're funded, what you're putting into that system, it it affects all of the other agencies and how our system is functioning at all. So we take it really seriously. We do use a risk assessment tool to figure out how we're going to monitor you. So some people will get, or some agencies will get bugged a little bit more, some will be a little bit less. It's a risk assessment tool based on like data quality. So like if you are a very large agency or you have lots of projects or programs or clients, then we're probably going to bug you a little more than an agency that only has a few clients. Yeah, and then if you'd like, you can contact us right now and we can schedule that monitoring for you. We're happy to coordinate with any of your other monitorings that you may have happening. HMIS monitoring is really like different and weird and kind of sits outside this whole process. So we tried to put them together last year and it became really mushy and weird and hard on agencies. So I want to leave that up to you guys as the recipients to decide when we come and bug you. If you don't tell us, then we'll just kind of pick a date out of a hat and hopefully it works for you. Anyway, that's all I have. Feel free to contact us. And I'm going to give it back to Tricia this time. So, yeah.
Sure, I'll take it. So just a reminder that there are 2 emails that all of our staff use in one way or another. And so, you know, we want to try to make sure that you're covered and we're covered. So any questions about contracts, let's see, contracts, program, monitoring, anything like that goes to hcdhomelessness@utah.gov. Any questions related to HMIS, and Lynn put it, they're both in there, thank you. Go to hmis@utah.gov. And then if you want to flip to that last slide, Russell, there are all of our there's all of our contacts, and we will make sure that the slideshow is posted on our website, as well as one of the recordings. And I know that it is a lot. This is a lot of information, and I always think we're going to get done sooner than we do, and it ends up going the entire time. And I'm sure that you all were like, really? Like, that's a long training. But you can see there's a lot of information. I guess just to boil it down as far as monitoring goes, Lynn did mention there's 3 different monitorings. There's data, program, and fiscal. We know that that's a lot. Again, there's always a method behind the madness. That's because really everything that's driving us right now, like I've mentioned before, is the strategic plan and those audits that we had done. And so we have been in course correction here over the last couple of years based on those, but we work really hard as a team to coordinate those monitoring visits so that we're not coming 3 different times. It's ideal for us to come once. And so that's something we're really working hard on, coordinating just internally. And yeah, a lot of information. Open it up to any questions. We're right at time. I'm sure everybody is done skate. Yeah. All right, well, just want to express our most sincere appreciation and gratitude for everything that you're doing. It's a lot. We're all in this together and we're here to help. We're not about trying to come and find problems to find problems, but want to help make us all successful. So help us help you and vice versa, okay? Thanks for all you do. There's a lot going on. Let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks.